Caro-Kann defense. You're about to learn everything there is to learn about the Caro-Kann defense. All the opening moves, all the middle game plans, the opening traps, beating the alien gambit, everything. My promise to you is if you watch this full video, you will not need to buy any more courses on the Caro-Kann defense. In addition to that, if you click the membership section on YouTube, you will get the full video explaining the entire Caro-Kann theory. So watch this full video. Apply what I teach and watch your ratings go through the roof. Kicking things off in the 500 region. Today, I'm going to be showing you guys the Caro-Kann defense. It's one of the most solid ways to play, and it's a lot of players' favorite opening. For example, Gotham chess. And once they play e5, we play c5. This is the exchange variation of the Caro-Kann defense. And then here they play the move pawn c3. We play knight c6, developing the knight, applying some pressure to the pawn. And bishop to b5 is a decent move because usually persons play knight f3 and it allows us to pin their knight. But here he didn't do it. So usually we want to play e6, but we don't want our bishop to be outside of the pawn chain. So I'm also thinking of knight h6 to f5. That's definitely an idea. Yeah, let's actually go knight to h6 because usually the knight from h6 goes to f5. And remember, we do not want to put our knights on the edge of the board. But one thing we're not afraid of is them taking on h6. Because if they take on h6, we take back and they lose their bishop here. And it's also easier for us to just go bishop g7 and castle. So that's what he did. Let's just take back. And from here, I'm just going to go bishop g7, get my king out the center of the board. Anytime the knight goes to f3, that's when you want to play bishop to g4. But if you can't play bishop to g4, your bishop is perfectly playable, placed on the f5 square. So he develops his knight, guarding his knight. Now I'm just trying to get my king out the center of the board, but first I'm going to take on d4. His knight is not able to take due to the pin, and then once he takes, I'll just go bishop g7 and castle, and I just don't want to be worried about any pawn takes c5. So let's just focus on getting our king out the center of the board. So he castled. We're also going to get castled. All right, he gave up his bishop for a knight, but I was threatening to take his pawn, so let's just take. Now we have two bishops versus two knights, so I'm not in the mood to give up my bishop for a knight, especially since I don't really get much for it. I have a little idea here of moving my king to h8 and then moving my rook to g8 and then starting an attack. He plays queen c2, attacking my unprotected pawn. So let's just play rook to c8 and guard the pawn. And there's also f6 here, which is an idea because once I play f6, I'm threatening to take on f6 and my rook is also going to be active on the f file. So he's getting his rook in the game. Let's go ahead and play f6. If he takes on f6, we take with the bishop. The f file is open, the g file is open. And if there's a file in front of your king, it's usually advised that you move your king out the way, put the rook on the g file, and turn that weakness into an attack. So he took. I'm actually thinking about taking with the pawn here, so that way the knight is not able to move forward. Let's just take with the bishop. It's fine. Like if the knight goes here, he will be attacking c6 twice. But then I have a plan of just playing maybe queen c7, apply pressure to the knight, play c5, which also apply pressure to b6. There's also queen to, well, there's no queen to b6. If queen to b6, I'm going to get forked. So let's be careful. So let's just play the regular queen to d6. That's what we looked on. And from here, I'm trying to play c5. His pawn on d4 is isolated, but I'm trying to eliminate this pawn, which is the main defender of this knight, and then try to win this knight. Okay, he plays g4, which is very aggressive. Generally, we don't want to be pushing pawns on the side that our king is on, though. So it's also a bit risky. The thing is, if I pull my bishop back to g6, his knight takes. And if I takes, his queen takes. And if I go here, then there's also knight takes. But I think right now, this knight is doing better than this bishop. So putting the bishop on f7 shouldn't be an issue. Okay, he plays knight to f3. Let's play pawn c5. I'm trying to break down the defense of his knight on e5. So once I go pawn c5, if he takes, we go rook takes. We hit the queen. So first he took on f7, which is hitting my queen. And okay, we have to take with the rook. And I'm assuming he's trying to put the other knight on e5. The funny thing about this is if I take it the queen, well, I can't even do that. And if I takes, he goes pawn takes. So let's just pull the rook back. And then my plan is to take, especially now that I'm guarding. But for 500, this guy's playing some chess. Okay, he moves his queen to d3. He's trying to ensure that he's keeping his pawn on d4 guarded. I'm still going to take the pawn though, because now I have two pawns in the center. He has no pawns in the center, so that's very good for me. His knight is also pinned. If I was able to apply more pressure to that pinned knight, that would be good, but I can't. If I takes, he's just going to trade. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this move rook to c2, which puts my rook on his second rank. And I'm trying to take on e5 and then take on f2 and then try to set up some checkmates. I'm also not really threatening the pawn on b2, but I'm applying pressure to b2. If he plays something like rook to d1, then bishop takes e5 should be winning. So he plays f4. This guy is playing some chess. I'm thinking about bishop to h4 here, which hits the rook, especially since the queen and the king is on the same line. If anywhere else the rook goes, then bishop f2. If I take c takes, hits the queen, I don't really have much. All right, let's try bishop to f4, hit the rook. He has to play rook to f1, and then I need to find a way to attack f4. Like if he plays rook to f1, then it's gonna be harder for me, to be honest, because this is a very strong and annoying knight. Hey guys, there's actually a lot of ways to detect what certain players' elo is. And I just found out that this guy's actually not a real 500, which is kind of crazy because, you don't want to be doing this, bro, especially messing up with my videos. Like, I'm still going to use this just to show you guys that this guy's just crazy and he's representing India. So look at this. I'm going through his games and I noticed that he's purposely losing games in one move, two move, one move. He's literally doing this all the way down. I'm not sure why he's doing that. Like he was like 900 and then he's losing all his games going down to 500. Why is he doing it? I don't know. But hey, let's play some chess. The guy played knight d3. He's guarding his rook and he's also protecting the f2 square. So let's just grab this rook. And I'm assuming he's gonna take with his rook. I'm not even sure how far he's coming from though, but I don't see the purpose of doing that, bro. Like, play some honest chess. That's kind of crazy. So, anyways, he took with the rook. I'm ahead by 2 points in this position. I'm thinking about just getting the queens off the board because, once you're winning, the easiest way to win is to trade the queens. I'm worried about rook takes e7, but there is this move that I have, but I don't think it works, so I'm not gonna play it. Okay, let's just start by playing the move. Let's just start by playing the move pawn to e6. And maybe I could try queen to f6 after. It's kind of messing with my brain, knowing that this guy's actually not 500 and he challenged me. So maybe I should just not play any more games with him. But let's just finish this game. So he took this free pawn, which means I'm not able to play this anymore. Let's see. Let's play d4 here. I have some plans of playing queen to d5, which threatens mate on g2. Right, now he plays rook to e4. There is a lot of pieces attacking here. If queen e4, then I'm assuming he's going to play queen takes. Rook e4, maybe he's still going to play rook takes, but at that point I should be able to go queen c6. Hmm. Queen c6, there's queen takes. All right, let me just add more defenders to my pawn on d4 first. Let's not complicate stuff because my rook is really cutting off his king. So all I need is to find a way to get one of my major pieces on the back rank or get my queen on g2 or h2. All right, knight e5 was played. There is queen to f7, which is a huge threat. Queen f7, I have to move. Queen check, he may get a draw. So maybe I need to go back. Let's just go back, hit the queen first. And then once the queen move, I try to roll my pawn up the board. I'm ahead by a point. It's still very complex because this is a very strong knight. So the queen moved out the way. And I think it's time to continue rolling my pawn up the board. There's no threat that I'm afraid of anymore. The plan is just to push the pawn 2 squares or push the pawn to d2 and get my rook to c1. That should be good. But queen c5 is also decent. So apparently there's no 500 rated player for this video, guys. But hopefully the 600 rated player is honest, you know? It's funny because there was also this 800 rated guy. He beat me in a game, and I was like, damn, I'm really gonna have to post this loss against the 800. And then, right as I was like editing the video and everything, and I was ready to post the video, I checked his profile and then he got banned. So then I had to play another 800 game and then post the video. I don't even remember what game I was playing, but I lost to an 800 rated player, and that was the guy. But anyways, he pulled the rook back to e1, and this should just be winning. I mean, there's queen check, which trades the queen. I don't think I need to do that. For now, let's just roll the pawn up the board, hit the rook, assuming he's going to put the rook here, and then rook to c1 should be winning. Like rook to c1 followed by queen d4 should just be GG's. You guys, there has been a lot of videos that I make, and everybody's like, yo, this is the strongest 500 guy I've ever seen. Anyways, he resigned, but more Caro-Kann defense against 600 players. Stick around. Opponent is now 600. Let's play some more Caro-Kann defense. All right, so we play d5 regardless of what they play. I'm expecting the exchange because, it's at the lower level and this is what they play at the lower level. And it's a very simple way to play with the black pieces once they play like this. It's all about developing. You develop the knight, you develop the other knight. If you get the chance to go bishop g4, for example, like this, pinning the opponent's knight, then always do it because it's kind of like a very cool way to win a pawn. A lot of person usually play h3. This guy didn't, so that's very nice. But let's just continue to develop. Now we have three pieces developed. The plan from here is to go e6, bishop d6, and castle. Now he plays h3. And because giving up the bishop for the knight doesn't really give me anything, I'm not going to give up the bishop for the knight. I'm going to pull it back to h5 and eventually play e6, bishop d6. So he castle. Let's go e6. Bishop on e7 is also very strong. A3 didn't do much. I guess he's trying to prevent the bishop from going to b4, but the plan was to put the bishop on this diagonal. And if you're playing the Caro-Kann, putting the bishop on e7 is also perfectly playable. This is just a matter of preference because sometimes a bishop on g5 could be annoying. Now he plays queen to d3. He's just trying to connect his rooks, but he also needs to develop this bishop. I'm going to play h6 here, so that way he's not able to pin my knight. And then I'm thinking about castling on the next move. Okay, he develops his bishop. Now we get working out the center of the board. The queen also seems as if it doesn't really have a lot of squares. Like, for example, could have actually played bishop to g6 and skewer his queen and his pawn because the queen and this pawn is on the same line. And once I go here, the queen has to go to one of these squares and then I grab the pawn. But if I go to g6, the queen has b4. And then once I take here, he takes here. So doesn't necessarily win a pawn. Okay, he jumps in with his knight on the e5 square, but guess the guy doesn't know how to count because I have two pieces on the square and he only has one, which means once I take that pawn, I'm winning a pawn. And yes, his bishop is attacking my bishop, but my knight is guarding it. So let's just take with the knight, the less valuable piece, so we don't give up the bishop for the knight. And then once he take, we simply take backhand. Just like that, the guy donated a pawn to us. Now, one thing I need to be careful about is if he takes and then I take, both my knight and my bishops are going to be unprotected, and unprotected pieces usually causes tactics, but it should not be an issue because even if there was a move that forks both my bishop and my knight, for example, queen e2, I should be able to just take the knight on c3. And then once he takes back, then I defend my knight. But instead, he used his rook to attack my bishop. So let's just pull the bishop back to c7. Could have put it on d6, but I'm trying to put my queen on the d6 square and set up some little checkmating ideas on h2. Okay, bishop goes here. That's not a fork as yet because I do not have enough pieces. It's very important that we have all our pieces in the game. So rook to c8, putting the rook on the file is good. Yes, I'm leaving this pawn unprotected, but if he takes the pawn, I play b6, and his bishop is going to be trapped. Which is why he plays knight to b5. Yo, knight b5 is a very nice move because if I pulls the bishop back, he's able to take with his bishop. So I now have to play bishop to b6, exchanging the bishops off the board. And, maybe I'm going to pull the knight back and eventually I'm going to target this pawn. But usually this is what the Caro-Kann is like. You slowly outplay your position. You have a very solid structure that has not a lot of weaknesses. So he took, we take back, hit the knight. My knight is on the edge of the board for a while, so I need to get my knight off. Maybe knight to f6 or knight to f4. Knight f4 is more aggressive, but it is an unprotected square. Okay, he plays a4 to guard the knight, and I'm going to play a6 to hit the knight because we do not want to allow pieces on our half of the board. I'm following what is called the principle of neutralization. And if he pulls his knight back to c3, his pawn on b2 is left unprotected. I'm just going to grab that pawn, and just like that, we're going to be ahead by 2 pawns. So he pulls the knight back. Now we take. I'm ahead by 2 pawns. Plus, I have 2 pieces attacking his knight. So maybe he thinks rook to b1 is trapping my queen, but his knight is under attack. He hits the queen, but now we have 2 attackers on your knight, bro. So now once we take the knight, we're just winning material. And I'm assuming he's gonna trade the queens before he take, because if he immediately takes the pawn, he loses his rook. So let's just take. And then once he takes, I take the pawn. And again, it's just an endgame that is easier for us to win. He's also trading. It's crazy how persons, whenever they're losing, they initiate trades. But trading is always good for the person who has more material. Now let's just bring the other rook on the file. I'm not really trying to guard this pawn, even though when you're winning, you don't really want to trade the pawns. But if he takes, I take, it's not really easy for him to attack anything else. And this is just completely winning. It's just a matter of time. And then he put his rook on a very passive square. Now we're attacking this pawn, keeping his rook passive. Now I need to bring my knight in the game. All right, so he's activating his king. Let's get this knight back in the game. Okay. Now the knight is centralized. His king is also not able to attack my rook. And then I also need to get my king in the game. So it's in the end game, the 3 main things that you guys are gonna learn is attack weak pawns, push past pawns, activate the king, and then anything else that prevents the opponents from doing these. And then there's also the theoretical side of it as well. He pulls the king back to guard this pawn, but he also left this pawn unprotected. Okay, rook to b1. No, this is a fork. It's not a fork that wins the rook though, because he is able to play king to d2. And once I take his rook, he takes my rook. But it's easier for me to win this game anyways. All right, let's just go back, hit the pawn. Now I'm just trying to take the pawns, queen my pawn, and win the game. Okay, let's go e5. Now I'm trying to get my king in the game. And now I'm just trying to promote my pawns here. All right, so he moves the king. Let's go g5. Eventually, I'm going to play e4 and d4, and then just roll these pawns up the board. I'm not sure why this guy's not resigning, though. It's kind of crazy. Okay, he moves the king. Let's continue to roll the pawns up the board. Keep rolling them. I mean, activating the king is important, but I should be able to win this game if I have 3 pawns and a knight just rolling up the board. He moves the king. Okay, maybe now it's time to activate my king, because if I push this pawn, I lose this pawn. Maybe I can push this pawn though, like push, takes, king takes, push, and then I queen. Yeah, that's what I should have done. But now that he goes here, that's just very easy for me to queen now. Now we queen. It's very important that we do not stalemate. And then from here, I'm trying to box his king in the corner. He finally resigns. More Caro-Kann defense against 700 players. Stick around. Opponent is now 700. Blessing you guys with some more Caro-Kann defense. Knight f3, we play d5. And we are seeing the exchange variation of the Caro-Kann. Now, most persons are going to play the exchange variation of the Caro-Kann, especially at the lower level. But it's actually the easiest line to play, because we literally just need to develop the pieces. Develop one knight, develop the other knight. And okay, now that he puts the bishop on d3, remember, if you get the chance to pin this knight, you could just win 3 pawns easily, because for one, they always play h3 and they forgot that their knight is the main defender of the pawn on d4. So we just take on d4. And yes, we're giving up the bishop for a knight, but we get a pawn for it. Now he has to move his queen out the way. And then after he moves his queen, I'm going to pull my knight out the way because my knight is unprotected. And then after this, I'm going to continue my development. He's also moving the bishop more than once in the opening. And queen to a5 check doesn't work, even though he's able to block with the knight. If I play d4, queen takes d4 is fine because my knight is pinned. So let's just continue with our development. He got his king out the center of the... Yo, every day I see a new country. Burkina Faso. Where is that country? Like, I know a lot of country. I've never seen that country before or seen this flag. Anyways, let's keep developing our pieces. Bishop e7 and castle is the plan, or bishop d6 and castle. All right, he got his rook in the game. Let's develop our bishop. On c4 is very aggressive, but that's fine though. I'll just castle. To take is a mistake. If he takes my pawn, I take with the knight, and then he's helping me to finish my development. Well, not my development, but he's basically just helping me to put my knight on a better square. And I'm ahead by a pawn. He's playing moves like knight c3 to take is a mistake. But in this case, once I take his knight, I'm weakening his pawn on c3. So now his pawn on c3 becomes a target, and we need to ensure that we finish our development still. So I'm going to play a very cool move, queen to b6. There is a drawback. I'm leaving my bishop unprotected, but I'm attacking this bishop. So if he takes my bishop, I take his bishop. And the trade is benefiting me because I'm ahead by a pawn. If he first takes my knight, I take back his bishop and I'm winning. Now he plays a4, guarding his bishop first. It gives me enough time to play rook to d8, putting my rook on the same line as his queen, and I'm threatening to win the queen at the same time, which is why he moves the queen out the way, and then he's putting his queen on the same line as my king. But how do I attack? There's two attacking moves that I have. One is bishop c5, one is knight e5. They're both good moves. I'm going to go with bishop to c5 because I'm now attacking his pawn twice and he is at risk of losing his rook. He is able to play this very annoying bishop h6, but I'm just going to take the free pawn on f2. Okay, bishop e3, decent move. Guy's trading. He's down in material, so that is not correct, by the way. So let's just trade. The bishop also no longer covers the d2 square. And we know that if we're able to put the rook on the second, then it makes our position way stronger. So let's hit him with rook to d2. The plan is to double up the rooks on the c file. Every single piece in that scenario is going to be very active. Okay, he's still trying to trade more pieces off the board, but still, to take is a mistake. If I take his rook, I'm not necessarily helping his queen, but I don't help myself. Look at this, guys. If I play rook to d8 and then he takes and then I takes, he's basically trading his e rook, not for my d rook because it's going to be off the board. He's trading his e rook for my a rook. So let's go rook to d8. If he takes, we just take back. Our back rank is a bit weak, but there's no way for him to get his queen on our back rank. So eventually we're going to play g6 to not have any back rank weaknesses. So he is trading. Now we just take back. Now we have two pieces attacking his weak pawn on f2. And these are called focal points, by the way, guys. Like if you want to be good at attacking someone's king, just remember, attack the pawns and the squares around the opponent's king. And the best squares is to attack the ones that is only being guarded by the king. So I'm expecting something like queen f3 or rook f1 or anything that guards the f2 pawn here. Okay, so he guarded the pawn. This may go in an endgame, but I do not care because I'm the one who is ahead in material. I'm trying to do a removing the guard tactic because the queen is the main defender of f2. So knight e5 hits the queen. I'm assuming he's going to play queen e3. And for some persons, lower rated players do that. Like, they trade assuming that going into the endgame is going to help them. But let's see. He did it. Now, not only am I ahead by a pawn, his c3 pawn is weak. His e3 pawn is weak. Now I'm going to hit him with rook to c2 because we're in the endgame. And in the endgame, it's very important that we attack pawns. And he moves his rook, and just like that, he's blundering the pawn. Now, once I take this pawn, I'm also going to be attacking his pawn on e3, and this is just completely winning. Let's grab the pawn. Tricked you, tricked you. It's a prank. He is threatening a checkmate. It's very important that we look on the opponent's last move. So let's play pawn g6, not getting checkmated. The good thing is my knight is also protecting my 7th rank. So his rook is not able to get to my 7th rank. One thing he could try to do is to check my king and then try to start harassing my pawns. But I should be able to grab like 2 of his pawns if he's going to take 1 of mine. But let's see what he does. Okay, he plays c4, doesn't change anything. In fact, that's a free pawn, but first I'm going to play a6. It's kind of like a removing the guard tactic. I could have took, but now I'm forcing his bishop to some uncomfortable scores like d7. Who wants their bishop on d7? And his bishop could also be trapped. Like, I'm not going to take it though because it just allows his rook to be active. But at that point, I may take on c4. Then you could say I'm threatening to get rid of this bishop, which will be guarding this pawn on a4. He checks. Let's just move the king. Still has to put the bishop somewhere. Maybe e8 is an option, but it doesn't really matter what he does. We're just going to be grabbing his pawns. Now we take the pawn. This pawn is under attack. And then he's using his rook to attack my pawn. But let's just go here and guard the pawn. And knight c4, like just putting the knight on c4, hitting this pawn. Knight c6 blunders the knight, so I have to be careful. Okay, he's activating his king, which is the correct thing to do. I'm going to check the king just so that way I'm able to put my knight on c5 with tempo. And now I'm covering the b7 square and I'm attacking this pawn on a4. All right, he saw that, defended the pawn, but now I'm able to play knight b3, attacking the pawn again. We're in the endgame. That's what we do in the endgame. We attack pawns. A random rook move, not really random. He's trying to go here. It's not a bad move at all. That is not a bad move at all. The moment the rook goes here, I'm going to be losing this pawn. There's not much I could do to prevent it though. Like, I'm going to try to win this game with my connected pass pawn. So rook goes here. This pawn is dead. I'm going to go king f6 just to ensure that my king is centralized once he take the pawns. And having connected pass pawn is usually just completely winning in the end game. So yes, he's grabbing some pawns, but now I'm just going to start rolling my pawns up the board. So he took another pawn. Let me get my, okay, actually, let's not lose another pawn. The bishop was attacking this, and I don't need to lose it. Like if rook e5 or rook g7, I'm able to guard it with the king. It's very important that we do not rush the endgame. And if you're someone who likes the Caro-Kann and you're going to play the Caro-Kann, you're going to go into a lot of endgames, especially if your opponent plays well. Because playing with the white pieces, they're the ones who usually tries to press for a win, and it's harder to try to win a position that is completely drawn. And white usually starts playing with the advantage. So the good thing about the Caro-Kann is white starts with the advantage, but the Caro-Kann is very solid, so it makes it hard for white to press that advantage to a win. But if you want to win your Caro-Kann games, you have to get good at the end game. I have a 4-hour long video, 4.5 video long on my Patreon where I just talk about getting better at the end game. So if you want to get better at the end game, get that Patreon. It's in my description. But he moves his king to hit the knight. I guard the knight. Then he pushes, and now I'm trying to use my rook to take this pawn. Not sure if I'm able to do that. I need to focus on just pushing my pawns up the board. So we have to take this pawn. Oh, wow. He's rolling. He doesn't care. Okay, let's go knight d6 hits the bishop. Let's see how much he doesn't care. And my whole idea is also to get my bishop behind his, well, my rook behind his pass pawn. Because usually it's best if you're able to keep your rooks behind the opponent's pawn. But now he puts the bishop here because he doesn't want my rook behind his pawn. Oh, okay, bro. All right, it's getting a bit tricky now, so I have to start rolling my pawns up the board. Once he push, all right, how am I going to do this? Because the moment this pawn gets here, it's GG's. Let's go knight f5. If he pushes the pawn, we sack the knight. He's only going to have one pawn left on the board. So we sack the knight. Once the rook takes, I continue to advance my pass pawns up the board. And I have what? 4 pawns, he has one. So the position is equal, but black is the only one who has winning chances. If white plays perfectly, maybe he could try to draw. But let's see. He hits the rook. Let's give a check. I'm also attacking this pawn. He pulls the king back, didn't guard the pawn, blundered his pawn. So let's just keep grabbing them pawns. If he goes here, then I go here. He attacks my pawn, which is not a bad move at all. Because once I, well, kind of have to protect it though, right? If I protect it, he attacks it again. Push this pawn, he takes, push the pawn again, the rook get behind the pawn, and then we grab the bishop. So let's guard the pawn. It's very important that your endgame is good. So now he's attacking this pawn, but now I'm able to roll this pawn. And yes, he's able to check. I'm just going to activate my king because if he takes after the trade, he's not going to be able to stop this pawn. He puts his rook here instead, but okay, I'm trying to set up a way to continue rolling my pawns up the board. If I push this, I lose this. If I push this, I lose this. King up. If he goes rook takes, then I roll. Or maybe not. Let's just do it slowly. King here, and then try to roll this pawn up the board. Now, it's funny how all my pieces are on light squares. That's not usually how you want to do it, guys, because the guy is a light squared bishop. He's now trying to grab this pawn. All right, let's go here protecting this. I'm losing this, but then I get the chance to push this. So I don't think he's going to be able to prevent 2 pawns from queening, but the guy's playing very well for 700. Okay, now he's hitting this. He's trying to prevent this. Now we play e5, rolling our pawn up the board. The rook attacks this pawn, so I should be able to push this one. But then he's just going to get behind it again. So we need to ensure that I prepare to push it. So let's put the king on f4. So that way, once I push and the rook attacks it, I go here. So the bishop goes back. Now he's trying to take. But I should be able to just push because if the rook goes, okay, he took and then now I queen and then I'm just completely winning. But he plays well for for a 700 rated player. Okay, he checks. Now we're just completely winning. So the goal is to start trading the pieces off the board. And now I'm just trying to set up my checkmate. He's just sitting to let his time run out, but I'll take it. More Caro-Kann defense against 800 level players. Stick around. The opponent is now 800. More Caro-Kann defense coming your way. Our bishop c4 is already bad. It's called the ill-billy attack, but the reason why it's bad is because in the opening stage of the game, you don't want to be moving the same piece more than once in the opening. And once we play d5, you're forced to move your bishop more than once in the opening. And from now, we're just going to develop normally. Develop one knight, develop two knight, get the other pieces out. So he plays d4. We go knight c6. Now we have two pieces developed. He plays knight f3. Now we go bishop g4, pinning the knight. If you're playing the Caro-Kann, usually the bishop goes to f5 or g4, but we prefer the g4 square, especially after a move like h3. Do not give up bishops for knights, except when you get something for it. So, for example, if he had taken with the pawn, we got to double up his pawns. Now he takes with the queen. The queen is no longer guarding the d4 pawn. Now we take on d4, and that's a fork. I'm also hitting the queen and the bishop. So if he moves the queen, I could choose to simply take his bishop, or I could play e5, protect my knight, and get good control over the center. So he plays queen c3. Okay. Usually it's more solid if the pawn is on e6. And my knight is currently under attack. So I'm assuming I'm just going to pull the knight back. I can also take his bishop and said, hey, I have the bishop here. But once I play pawn to e6, his bishop is pointing towards a pawn chain, which is bad. Now he also plays the move bishop to e3. And this is also bad because he's putting his queen and his bishop adjacent to each other. So if you notice how it looks, I'm able to play this move pawn to d4. And that's just a fork. And just like that, I mean, we're already ahead by a pawn, but we're also about to win even more material. Once he moves the queen, we grab the bishop and 10 moves into the Caro-Kann and we're already ahead by a piece. He took. Let's just stay back, hitting the bishop. I could have also taken with the queen, by the way. Okay, that was... Ah, I can actually play b5. I thought I had to block and then queen takes and then he got the pawn, but I'm actually able to block with... Oh, nah, it's fine. If he sacked the bishop and then play queen check, I block with the queen and I'm safe. So he still has to pull the bishop back to e6, and I'm just going to play e6 and I'll be fine. So he pulls the bishop back. E6 is the move that I want to play, but what if I'm able to swing my rook in the game and gain a tempo on the queen? That's even better for me. I'm going to play e6 eventually, develop my bishop and castle. So he moves his queen out of the way. Fair enough. That's a pawn, by the way, but I'm already ahead by 3 points. I think it's better if I just prioritize my development at this point. So he got his king out the center of the board, still a pawn, but let's develop our bishop, putting the bishop on the same line as the queen, which means I am now threatening some very nice discovered attack, which is why he moves his queen out the way. But the queen is no longer guarding the e2 square, and that's just a fork. And we're not winning the queen. This guy blundered two forks and he's 838, which means if he wants to get better at chess, all he needs to do for the next how many days? Only do forks. He moves king. We grab the queen. We're just completely winning from here. The plan is just to get the king out the center of the board, trade some pieces, but he resigns. More Caro-Kann defense against 900 level players. Stay Caro. Your opponent is now 900. More Caro-Kann defense coming your way. Knight f3, we play d5. The lower rated players, they usually go for the exchange variation of the Caro-Kann. Pawn to d3 is not good because after takes, we get an endgame. But, you know, we prevent his king from castling, but we don't necessarily need the endgame here. So let's just develop our bishop to pin his knight and just finish the development of our other pieces. All right, so he developed the bishop. Now we develop the knight, and we now have two pieces attacking this pawn on e4, which is why he developed his knight. Now he has two pieces defending the pawn. And from here, I just need to finish my development. Let's go e6. We have to ensure that we're always looking out for him playing e5. But anytime he plays e5, we pull the knight back to d7. And again, this is like a French defense, but it's a good French defense because our bishop is outside of the pawn chain. Now that he castles the king, there's a tactic in this position. Why is there a tactic? because notice how his knight is the main defender of this pawn on e5, and my knight is attacking this pawn on e5. So now we're able to do a removing the guard tactic, which is one of the tactics that will be discussed in my upcoming book. But bishop takes f3, now we take the pawn on e5, and it moves into the Caro-Kann. We are ahead by a pawn. He moves the queen to hit the knight. Let's just focus on our development, developing the knight, guarding the other knight. Now that he plays d4, now that he's forcing us to move the knight, that's when we're going to take his bishop on f3. And then after he takes with the queen, what do? We finish our development. We get the king out the center of the board, and then we can start going for some pawn breaks. Okay, he plays bishop f4. Remember, to take is a mistake. It's better if they take us. So let's go queen to c7. If he takes my bishop, I take, helping my queen to be on a better position, and then I get my king out the center. Okay, he took. Let's take back. I'm going to castle on the next move. And he pulls the knight back. Not sure why. Let's get the king out the center of the board. I'm assuming he wants an endgame, but yeah, because you can't want an endgame and you're down in material. All right, guys, we have to talk about planning. If you're someone who play good opening, good middle game, or just good opening and you don't know what to do in the middle game, it means you don't know how to come up with a plan. And planning has everything to do with pawn breaks, and that's what I'm doing now. Once my rooks and my king is the only pieces on the back rank, that's when I'm going for the pawn break. I am leaving my f5 square unprotected, which is allowing knight f5 hits the queen, but then I'm just going to go qf6. It applies more pressure to d4, and white has nothing. Okay, he plays c3. Now we're going to just roll the pawns up the board. Instead of taking and give him the iso pawn, which is fine, we're going to play e4. Once the queen move, we're thinking about playing f5, and we're actually going to start a king side slash attack in the center. So he moves the queen, now we play f5. And because the queen and the knight is adjacent to each other on the same color, then it helps us to play f4, which will be a fork. But he just needed to play f4. He didn't. He moved his knight out the way. Maybe he wants to put something on f4, but because we also have two pieces covering the f4 square, we play f4 ourselves and continue with the attack. And from here, I'm also thinking about playing f3, and I'm going to be exposing his king, which is going to be way easier for me to attack him. So he moves the queen out of the way. Let's continue with the attack. And a smart thing for him to do was to not take the pawn, move the knight, then move the rook, and just allow me to leave my pawn on g2. But he did decide to take. So taking with the rook is good, but I like the idea of taking with the pawn, because now I have a very simple plan. Get the queen to g2. If I'm able to get my queen to g2, then that will be a checkmate. He needs to play knight g3 to not be immediately mated. But now I'm going to hit him with queen e6, and automatically I'm threatening to play queen h3. He plays immediate rook to e1, which attacks my queen, but that doesn't help, because all I need to do is play queen h3, and there's literally nothing he could do to prevent a checkmate. Like, I could pre-move this. He doesn't even have a move where he's able to sack his queen and check me. It's GG's, bro. Like the video, guys. Remember to like the video. And he resigns. Opponent is now 1,000. Let's go some Caro-Kann defense. D4, we go d5. And we're seeing the advanced variation of the Caro-Kann. I recommend to just play c5 and immediately target their pawn. Now, taking on c5 is actually one of the main lines, but let's see how much he knows it. We're not afraid of them taking on c5. We're just going to play knight c6. Eventually, we'll be able to play e5. Bishop to b5 is also the main line, because now I'm not able to take because my knight is pinned. Usually, we're able to play queen a5 hits the bishop, and if knight c3, we play d4. But in this scenario, he's able to take with check, saves the bishop, and if I takes, queen takes, and I'm losing the pawn. So I also need to be careful about that. So because I'm trying to play e6, let's just first play bishop f5, get the bishop outside of the pawn chain, and then play e6 with the idea of just grabbing back my pawn. Okay, he develops his knight. Now we play e6. The plan is to take, and if white really knows what he's doing, he's going to play moves like bishop e3 or pawn to b4, and that's exactly what he's doing. But that's fine, though. Let's finish our development like this. Knight e7 with the idea of playing knight g6 and then targeting the pawn on e5. And then there's also bishop g4 with the idea of getting rid of this knight, which is the main defender of the pawn. So sometimes persons are going to try to hold on to the pawn, greedy persons, but eventually you're going to win back the pawn. So nothing to worry about. Just ensure that you do not go out of your way trying to win back the pawn, because you will. So just finish your development. Now he plays a6, which means b4 is now kind of guaranteed. But let's continue with the plan. Knight g6. Now we have technically one attacker, seeing that this knight is pinned, but I'm trying to play bishop h3, get rid of this knight. Okay, he gave up the bishop for the knight, but that was a bit too early. And then he played bishop to d4. All right, so bd4, I'm trying to apply some pressure here. F6 is also an idea. Like if I play F6 takes, I'm able to play E5 in the future and then just start rolling the pawns up the board. But let's go bishop E7 and castle first. I think I want to get my, I mean, I don't think I need to get my king out the center though. That's the thing. Now he plays H3 because he wants to play G4 and trap my bishop. But I don't think the bishop is even going to get trapped. There's always the E4 square. So let's just go immediate F6, especially since he's being greedy. We want to try to punish him by breaking some principles ourselves. All right, he played b4, guarding his b pawn, because there's some ideas where if I takes, after everything is captured, his c pawn would have been hanging. So he guarded the b pawn first. Now I'm thinking about just playing a5. You know, like moves like a5 are always going to be good because once I take, it opens up the file for my rook. But I'm only going to take if it helps. Like usually it's good to just leave the pawn on a5. Maybe he plays c3 here, which is also strong. Okay, knight e2 is also strong. If I take, he takes. So let's go queen to c7 and apply even more pressure to e5. So I have one, two, three pieces attacking e5. He has two pieces guarding e5. So if he plays queen e2, then he loses this pawn. If he takes, I take with the f pawn and then I play e5. Okay, so he took. Let's just take back. The idea is to play e5, hit the bishop. There's still this very annoying move, pawn g4, which semi-traps my bishop. But if he plays g4, I go bishop e4, takes, hit the knight, and then there's all sorts of dynamic complications with both kings in the center of the board. Well, this guy's only 1,000, by the way, guys. So if he's playing very strong for 1,000. But let's see. Okay, he got out of the pin with the rook. So now I'm thinking about hitting the bishop with e5. There's also knight f4, which hits this unprotected pawn. And we have to play for some initiative here. So let's go knight to f4, just putting pieces on his half of the board. And I'm also attacking his unprotected pawn. So let's see how he's going to defend it. He's also playing very fast for 1,000 as well. So we have to lock in. Rook to g3. He guarded the pawn. All right, let's try h5 here. Let's try h5. What I'm trying to do is to play h4, which forces the rook away, then grab the pawn. There's also ideas where I could take on g5 and then play rook to h1. So I like my position. Like, there's no castling that's going to happen. This is what you call a dynamic position, guys. Like, black is not castling, white is not castling. Okay, he took my bishop. Finally, let's take back, hit the knight. And then once the knight move, I may either push or take. I'm also thinking about rook to d8, which pins his bishop to the queen because his bishop is on the same line as the queen. He pulls the knight back, which means he's hitting this pawn, and once he takes, he will be hitting this pawn. I could hit the bishop now, but he's always going to just play bishop e3. Or if I takes, there's queen takes. So maybe I need to play h4 and just hit the rook. And this is me trying to do a removing the guard tactic. I mean, I'm assuming he's going to try to keep his rook on this line. Like if he pulls the rook back, then I'm just going to take. Oh, rook to b3. Yo, these moves are crazy, bro. What the heck? Okay, rook to d8. Hit the bishop. If the bishop goes back, I take. If knight takes, I push. Let's try rook to d8. Again, we're still trying to keep some initiative. There's also a4 here, which hits the rook. Rook c3. Yeah, let's try that. Yeah, let's hit the rook again. If he pulls the rook back, then he loses the pawn. Rook c3, there's knight d5. Rook can't go here, 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 here. Okay, rook c3, knight d5 traps the rook. But then I'm also trying to play rook to d8. So he pulls the rook back to b1, which means now this pawn is unprotected. But do we play rook to d8 first? Because, I mean, the threat is better than the execution, right? So first, let's play rook to d8, knowing that now he has a bishop under attack and he has a pawn under attack. So once he plays his move, we take the pawn, move the knight out the way, roll this pawn up the board, and that should help us to win the game. So he plays c3, which means d3 is also a bit weak, but c3 hits my pawn. Okay, maybe I need to go for some checkmates here. Check king up. Nah, let's just take. Eventually, I should be able to pull the knight back and then check and then swing the queen in. But once I have this pawn rolling up the board, it's going to be very good. Now, if he takes, move his queen, he's also going to have pawns rolling up the board. So queen e2 hits my pawn. If I go here, he's going to take. Oh, I missed that, man. Okay, first maybe I need to play e5. E5, but then the bishop goes back and I can't guard this. So hit this queen here, roll. Yeah, this is so weird, bro. It's crazy. Queen h2, queen takes check. f5 loses this. Maybe I could sack and then play f5. I mean, that's an idea. Sack the rook, play f5. I don't think I have too much compensation, but all my pieces are going to be active. Yeah, let's do that. Let's sack the rook. It's crazy how this guy's playing. How is he 1000 playing like this? So once he takes, I go f5. If he takes, I take, and then the plan is to play knight f5. And then I'm trying to check here. I'm trying to get my bishop active. I'm trying to roll my pawn. So even though I'm down by the exchange, I think I have some initiative. But he's now ahead by 2 points, so we just have to lock in here. f3, backside. All right, let's hit the queen first. We just have to hit the queen first. I mean, maybe there was check, but he's going to block with the queen. If queen here, I win the queen, and if queen here, I win the queen. If queen here, I also win the queen. So he has to be careful. So he has to go queen here or queen here. Okay, queen here is a bit passive. That's a bit passive. Now I'm able to check the king here, forcing the king to move, and then my queen joins the attack. Yo, that rook sack was actually a nice sacrifice because now my queen is able to join, especially if he plays king up. He probably needs to put the king here. So he puts the king here, I check. King up, that's a GG's. Good game, bro. Check. Bro, you played very well. You played very well for 1000. But that's just a checkmate. More Caro-Kann defense against 1100 players. Stick around. Our opponent is now 1100, playing some more Caro-Kann defense. So d4, we play d5, regular stuff. And then he's going with the same knight d2 idea. But we're always going to take and then play knight f6. And then if they take, we take with the... Yeah, we always see the lower rated players going for the alien gambit. But don't worry, guys. This is how we beat the alien gambit. We're going to play h6, and we're going to allow him to play the alien gambit. And keep in mind, I have a full video on the membership section of YouTube, which explains everything about the Caro-Kann, and beating the alien gambit is in it. So once they go knight f3, we don't go bishop g4 because it loses. So now we play pawn c5. Like, if you want to know the overview of beating the alien gambit, target the d4 as much as you can. If you have to move your king, pull your king back to g8. So for example, now that he checks the king, we don't want to put the king on e8. We put the king on g8. So that way the king is now safe there. And a lot of players are going to play knight g3, trying to win our rook. If they do this, we don't necessarily have to guard the rook, because right now the rook isn't doing anything, and this is a very strong knight, and we are already ahead by a piece. He checks anytime. Like, I've seen persons taking the bishop out, then playing e6, but if they check, it's actually very good to play e6. So keeping your bishop behind so you're able to defend with e6 is very strong. And now the opponent decided to castle, and I believe I'm able to just take on d4. Like, I could go queen takes, but I mean, queen e2, he's not going to trade, obviously. There's knight c6 in this position, and then maybe he's going to trade. And my queen could be a bit wobbly, but my goal is to, I mean, I'm ahead in material. I want to trade some pieces off the board. Like, the theoretical scenario here is to go knight c6, knight g6, and then queen e8 is a brilliant move. But usually they already play c3 though. So I don't want to get greedy though. Let's not get greedy. Let's continue. It would be bad if we're trying to get greedy and we're already ahead by a piece. So let's go knight c6. If he takes on c6, we're trading, and we're still applying pressure to d4. The best move according to the engine here is actually knight g6, but I'm just winning. I mean, queen to f3 was played, so he's just trying to sacrifice the pawn. I'm not being greedy. The guy just wants me to take the pawn. I'm going to take the pawn. At least I didn't take with my queen and then expose my queen early. So now I'm actually going to just hit him with knight takes d4, hit the queen. The knight is now unstable on the e5 square. Usually the plan is to play moves like g5 bishop g7 or g5 rook h7 with the idea of swinging over the rook. I'm also hitting the queen and the pawn on c2 at the same time. But I need to ensure that I put a lot of effort into playing with all my pieces because, especially in the Alien Gambit, the whole idea is to sacrifice, prevent the opponent from playing with their pieces, and then you're going to have a lot of pieces. So queen to g3 was played, and that's not a fork because of the bishop. I wish I could find a way to get rid of that bishop. So why not hit him with b5? Like if I hit him with b5 and he pulls the bishop back, he loses the queen. If he puts the bishop here, I hit him with c4. So let's go b5. That's how it works, guys. This is me trying to attempt a removing the guard tactic. I want to fork. The bishop prevents me from forking. We try our best to chase away the bishop. It's that simple. Now his bishop is almost trapped. It has no good squares. Guy's 1100. Maybe he's going to put his bishop on g6, but it loses the queen. The best thing for him to do in this position is to play c3 and counterattack my knight because offense is the best defense. But guess what? We're already ahead in material. We would love to trade all the pieces off the board. So if he plays the move pawn c3, I still take his bishop. Yes, he's going to take my knight, but from there I could choose to take his pawn, which gives me even more material, or go bishop d6, finishing my development, pinning his knight, just clapping the knight off the board, and just keep trading until we get to the end game where okay, come on, bro. Why would you do that? Like, that's just a free bishop. You could have at least played c3. Like, I think he knows that knight to e2 is just going to win his queen. And he's like, oh, I have to move the bishop. You didn't have to move the bishop. Or maybe he thinks I'm going to take with the king and there's queen check, but I'm just going to take with the rook. Now it's easier to play g5 and swing my rook in the game. Now my rook is actually doing something, defending my king. And I'm threatening a fork on e2. And I'm threatening your unprotected pawn. So he moves his queen to g6. And we're now ahead by 6 whole entire point. What do we do when we're ahead by so much points? We get the pieces off the board. Now if the queen takes, the knight takes, and we're chilling. Okay, he hits the knight. Not bad. But let's trade, bro. Let's just trade. Once the knight takes, okay, my knight could take here, but I need better. Like, I don't want to just grab a pawn being ahead by so many points. Like, I prefer to trade pieces off the board and then finish my development. Especially since he wants to put his rook on d8 and then pin my bishop. Like, let's just get the pieces off the board. Let's check, force the king to move, grab the bishop. And I mean, if he still plays rook d8, there's always bishop to b7. And if he check, there's king here. So I'm completely safe, but I'm just trying to trade everything because that's how you play when you're ahead in material. So he did play rook to d8. I mean, he's threatening a checkmate. I have to play bishop to b7, but this is only helping me to trade more pieces because now I'm ahead by 9 points. So eventually he has to take my knight. And if he wants to take my knight, he has to trade rooks first. If he plays knight e7 check, I move the king. Now the knight and the rook is under attack, which is what he did. Now what does he have here? He has to trade here. But once I take, his knight is now under attack. The thing is, okay, I thought his knight was trapped. It's not. It's kind of trapped though. My knight is trapped. All right, it would be cool if I'm able to take his knight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go bishop c5. This is called dominating, by the way. Notice how I put the bishop 2 squares in front of the knight. It means the knight has no squares to move. And now once I pull the rook back, then the knight is now actually trapped. So my knight should have been captured. But no, I'm going to get his knight in return. And he's now down by 3 pieces. So he gave up the knight for a pawn. Let's just take on a7. And from here, I'm also trying to trade the rooks off the board. He puts his rook on the file. Let's just go king e7, rook to d8, trade the rooks off the board, win a very easy game. All right, he moves his rook. He's not trading. That's the right thing to do. Let's get to a rook on his second rank. I'm also threatening to just take on f2, which could lead to a checkmate. Like there's some nasty stuff that I'm threatening here. But the opponent resigns. More Caro-Kann defense against 1200 players. Stick around. Opponent is now 1200. Let's play some more Caro-Kann defense. We play d5 after, regardless of what they play. And he's playing the advanced variation of the Caro-Kann. Let's just play c5 here. Then he plays c3, we play knight c6, and our goal is to apply as much pressure as possible to the d4 pawn. And whenever you see them play knight f3, we now go bishop g4, and we're always going to want to get rid of this bishop and take the knight, especially now. And this is not a blunder. This is actually a trap, guys, because if I takes, thinking I'm winning material and the knight is pinned, he's going to play queen a4, which checks the king and hit the knight. And if I think I'm able to pull the knight back, then he's going to take my bishop. So that's actually not a bad trick at all. With that being said, I'm going to play the move knight h6. Why knight h6? Because for one, I'm protecting my bishop, but two, eventually I want my knight on the f5 square, applying more pressure to d4. So now that he plays h3, we will be giving up the bishop for the knight. And then once he takes okay, if I play knight f5, there's immediate bishop d3, but I should be able to just play e6 and protect my knight. And it's one of those positions that I've gotten in the French. But the good thing about this is I do not have the bad light squared bishop anymore, so everything should be okay here. Okay, so bishop to g4, he's applying some pressure to my queen. Let's go queen b6. Now I'm applying even more pressure to d4, and I'm applying pressure to his pawn on b2. So he guarded it with the rook. Let's take on d4. And what I think he needs to do is to eliminate my knight on f5 first. Because if he takes on d5, well, that's bad. Because I have too many attackers. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take on d4. And if he plays knight takes d4, I could play either queen or knight takes. So we're already ahead by a pawn, guys. And if you're trying to learn the full theory of the Caro-Kann, it will be available in the membership side of YouTube. And if you haven't liked the video as yet, there is a like button. Liking the video helps with the algorithm, so I appreciate it a lot. Okay, so instead he decides to just develop his queen, pinning my knight instead. But this only helps me to double up his pawns though. Like now I check, he has to take, his pawns are doubled, and then I'm gonna easily get my king out the center because now I'm able to play bishop to b4 and check his king. And if he blocks with the bishop I take, his king is not safe. If he moves the king, which he did, I simply get my king out the center of the board. And again, if you look on my position, it is very solid. I have no weaknesses. His pawn on e5 is also hanging. So my bishop is under attack, so we have to move. Let's just pull the bishop back, which means I'm attacking his pawn on f2 twice. I'm attacking his pawn here once. He moved his queen, which did absolutely nothing, which means now I'm able to take this pawn on e5 for free, and I'm just winning the game. So let's just take this pawn, and that's just a free pawn. That was a trick. Like, it's a trick, but this is actually a very scared position because if I play h6, he's going to sacrifice the bishop. If I play G, like he's threatening mate, by the way. Like if you didn't see that, then I don't know. But he is threatening mate. If I play G6, I'm weakening my dark squares. Pawn G6, I think I have to play. Pawn G6, there is bishop F6, and then he's trying to play queen F6. He's also guarding his E pawn. Pawn G6, bishop F6, I move my rook out the way. The moment the queen goes to H6, I go back. F6 takes, no, can't go F6. H6 takes, then take. That's too risky. I think I have to play G6 here, guys. It's a very scary position. I need to get my bishop here ASAP. Okay, bishop h6 wasn't most accurate. Maybe he should have tried bishop to f6. Because I can also sacrifice the exchange and I still have an advantage because he's giving me more material. But I can also just pull my bishop back, hit the queen, and then once the queen move, I take. But I think sacrificing, no. If I sack the exchange, he's not going to take. He's just going to go queen f6 and I lose the game. That's crazy. Which means his threat is to play queen f6. So the first thing I'm going to do is play bishop e7, hit the queen, so that way queen f6 is not possible. And then once the queen move, I move my rook, and my dark squares are not so weak anymore. So he moves his queen. My rook is still under attack. Let's just put the rook on the file. And I mean, because the position is getting scary, I'm thinking about just getting the queens off the board. But I'm also thinking about applying pressure here. He's putting his rook on the same line as my queen. Very aggressive guy. If I play QC7, there's rook E1. So it's not like I'm getting that pawn anyways. Whenever you're under attack, guys, you need to remember to get the pieces off the board, especially the queens. Once you're able to get the queens off the board, you neutralize the attack. Especially since I'm ahead by a pawn, the attack is just neutralized. And now it's just about endgame technique. I know that some of you guys are good in the opening, okay in the middle game, and then all of a sudden you messed up the endgame. That's where my endgame course comes in. It is in the Patreon, and it's also in the link in the description. But now he didn't trade. He pulls the queen back to d2, and he's just hanging this pawn basically. Like, I could take with the knight. That's more pressure on the bishop. Bishop takes g6, I'm slightly afraid of. But once I take the queen, oh, yeah. Nah. Because if I takes bishop g6, my queen is hanging. And if I take his queen, he pulls his bishop back first with check. And then after I block the check, then he takes. So he basically wins back the pawn. So instead, I'm just going to take with the queen, and I'm still ahead by 2 pawns. All right, so he pulls the bishop back, hits the queen. Where do we put that queen? There's queen d4. There's just the simple queen f6. Because if he moves the bishop, he's hanging this pawn. My bishop on e7 is also guarded, and we're just collecting the pawns one by one here. There's also e5, which is coming. And once I play e5, I have very good control over the center. So he plays rook to e1. I should still be able to play e5 because I have enough attackers on e5. If he takes, I takes, I'm winning. So let's hit him with e5. And okay, bishop to g5 works. No, because if I takes, 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 there's rook takes. The good thing is, in the end, I'm still able to take on e3. So I'm going to be chilling regardless. But instead, he puts the bishop on g6. I could still take the pawn. I'm still going to take the pawn. Because if he takes on e5, he's giving up his bishop. And that's a very strong bishop, especially since I have dark square weaknesses. Plus the fact that he's losing another pawn on h3. Yep. So he did take. First thing we do is we take on h3 with check. That's called an in-between move, forcing his rook to block. Because if he puts the king on e2, he puts the king in front of the rook. Now there's nothing guarding the bishop. Now we take the bishop, and that's just a free bishop, bro. And now he moves the king out the way, but it's too late. Look at this, knight f3. Everything is forked. But let's not do that. I think this bishop is just hanging, and I'm just going to take the bishop. Because even though he's able to take back my bishop, his rook and his king is on the same line, and once I hit him with rook c1, that is where resignation comes in. Because I check, the king has to move, grab the rook, and we're winning. Unless I'm able to mate, but I'm not even seeing a good check that I have, so let's just grab this rook. He's able to take my knight, but once I... Ooh. If he takes my knight, the king is the only defender of the queen. So I'm able to play rook to e1, which is a removing the guard tactic. And once the king takes, we take the queen, and we're winning the game. So he decided not to take back. But that's not going to help his situation because this king has nowhere to move. So all I need to do is to check that king, and I'm winning. There's this move, rook to e1 check, but then he's able to block with the queen. There's checking him here. He's able to take with the queen. There's checking him with the knight, and the king has nowhere to move. I think this is the best one because in all the cases, I'm winning the queen, but I'm losing a rook. In this case, the king has nowhere to go, so he has to sack the queen for the knight. We win the queen, we win the game. So he takes, now we take, and it's just a matter of moves until he's checkmated. But he resigns. More Caro-Kann defense against 1,300 players. Stick around. Our opponent is now 1,300, playing some more Caro-Kann defense. C4 is very interesting. C4 is a very interesting way to play, but regardless of what they play, we're still going to be playing d5. And then he plays knight c3. So I'm just going to play it as if we're playing the regular Tartakova. So let's just take on e4, and I'm still going to play knight c3. So let's just go knight f6. If he takes, I take, and again, maybe he's going to be able to play d4. And this is not a bad setup, by the way, because generally their plan is to do this. But let's see what he's doing. Let's go bishop d6 and get the king out the center of the board. He develops his knight. Let's get the king out the center of the board. I'm expecting bishop e2 because I am threatening to check. So he played bishop e2. And now I'm going to play the move bishop to g4. So he got his king out the center of the board. Let's finish our development. Knight d7 now. All our minor pieces are now developed. And the plan is to play rook to e8 and then knight to f8. And then once he plays h3, I pull back to h5. So usually I try to get the knight to f8 before developing this bishop. But based on the 1600 rated game, if you haven't watched, well, I'm assuming you haven't watched it as yet, but I now prefer to go bishop g4. So queen to b3 was played. He is attacking my pawn on b6. So let's just play queen to c7 guarding that pawn. Pawn to c5 will be slightly annoying because it forces my bishop back, but it will weaken his d5 square. So I'm fine with that. Okay, he's getting his rook active. So let's also get our rook active on this file. And if you're watching this video, there's going to be another Caro-Kann video, which is only available to my maybe 170 members now. The last time I checked, it was at 167. So I really appreciate you guys for supporting the channel. He plays bishop to d2. And taking here doesn't really help me. And I'm thinking of just playing pawn to c5 because all my minor pieces are developed. My rook is active. Maybe I could swing this rook over in the board first, but let's just play immediate c5. And remember what we talked about when we said planning, guys. Planning has a lot to do with the pawns. So it's very important that you understand pawn structure if you want to understand how to plan. Okay, now he plays d5. He has a pass pawn, but slightly weakening the e5 squares. So that could be beneficial to us. So now I'm thinking about just doubling up on the e file. Like this rook is the only piece that is not doing anything. So I'm just going to double up on the e file, and then all my pieces are now going to be doing something. Okay, pulling the bishop back. That's a nice move because even if I try to take, the queen is going to take. But let's just continue with the plan of doubling up on the rooks. And I'm assuming he's just trying to get to the end game here, which is not a bad plan. I mean, if I takes, he has rook takes first, 95. 95 could be something. Let's try 90. Like I could take, but let's try to keep some more pieces on the board. This is just a matter of preference. Like I'm just keeping more pieces on the board. Like eventually it will go to an endgame because after takes, he's also able to play f4. And then f4 may also comes with ideas of trapping my light squared bishop. So I have to be careful. But for now it doesn't work. Let's take on e5. And if he plays d6, then I'm just gonna take. Now, in terms of end games is a bit harder than opening and middle game. When it comes to the end game, you have to ensure that you understand stuff like attacking weak pawns, push pass pawns, activating the king. And I guess that's what this guy's trying to do. He's just trying to get to an end game. All right, we will get to an end game. If I takes, then he's gonna maybe take here first, then queen takes. So checking the king. And then once the king moved, then I take. I think that's a better way to go to the end game. Like we're still trading, but I'm forcing his bishop back. So now we take. The bishop now has to take. He is threatening to play g3, which would trap my bishop. So I have to pull my bishop back, and I'm expecting him to put his bishop back on c3. But at least I managed to get his king closer towards the corner of the board because in the end game, king activity becomes very important. If he puts the bishop back on c3, then I'm just going to play b6. And usually that's how players play because they're like, okay, I don't want too many pieces on the board because I'm playing against someone strong. They're going to find some tactics. But if I'm in an end game, I have a better chance to win. But that's usually not how it goes. Especially at the lower level, persons are usually very bad at end games. And then in the end game, that's when you see their true strength. But let's see. Maybe this is someone who plays better in the end game and he brings the games closer to the end game. Talking about end game, if you want to be better at the end game, I have a very long end game course on my Patreon. So feel free to get it. The link is in the description. If I takes, he's going to play queen takes. So I'm going to play b6, protecting my b pawn. So that way, if he takes, I play queen takes. And then more than likely he's going to play queen e3, just trying to get the pieces off the board. But he wants endgame, so I'm going to show him endgame technique. Okay, queen to b5 doesn't do anything. I mean, now I'm able to take his bishop, double up the pawns. That's a slight advantage for us. So let's just grab that bishop, double up them pawns, which was a prank. Hopefully you saw the guy is threatening checkmate on the back rank. So let's be careful. If I play g6, then my bishop is trapped. So I have to play h6, but if I play h6, then he has bishop d3. Now, because this is very likely to go in an endgame, let's just play king to f8. King to f8 also prevents the threat. I'm trying to prevent his pieces from entering in my half of the board as best as I possibly can. There's this queen c6 move that doesn't do anything because his pawn is going to be too overexerted. He took. I could take with the pawn and said, okay, I do not have double pawns anymore. I could take with the queen. If I take with the queen, queen to c6, queen to e8. Weird. Because my light squared bishop needs to be over here and it's not. Take with the pawn. Yeah, let's just take with the pawn. Because I wanted to take with the queen, but queen c6 followed by pushing the pawn up the board would have been too annoying. At least now I undouble my pawns, and I'm thinking about playing f5, bishop e8, just pulling my bishop back in the defense because he has a pass pawn. So we have to ensure that we're careful. b4. Okay. If I takes, then queen takes, I'm more than likely going to just allow him to take. And then after he takes, then I take. And then if he trades the queen, his pawns are on light square. And since it's a light squared bishop ending, that will be better for black. So let's just play f6. The plan is to pull the bishop back to e8, hit the queen. And if he takes, then we're straight in the endgame. And I will also be attacking this pawn on c5. Like if he takes, then the endgame is actually, I think it's winning for black. His king is just too far away from the action. And I think my king is quicker to get over here and attack his pawns. I don't think he should trade queens. Like queen to d7 would be annoying because if I take, maybe he gets a chance to get a perpetual check and draw the game. But he traded. So let's play the end game, I guess. Now, in the end game, it's very important that you attack pawns, which is why he attacked my pawn. So we still have to waste one move. But I want you guys to notice what I'm doing here. I'm putting my pawns on dark squares. This is very important. When you're in the endgame, especially a bishop endgame, you need to put your pawns on the opposite color of the opponent's bishop. Notice what he's doing. He's putting his pawns on light squares, and this pawn is also fixed on a light square. So I'm trying to get my king as active as it possibly can. How long will it take me to get my king around here? Like if he plays king up, I play king back. King up, king up, king up, king up, king up. So it looks like he's reaching in time. I need to find a way to attack this pawn. I want to play f5 as well, but that doesn't really like if I could play f5 and then f4, then that would be good because I would be fixing his pawns on the light squares. Uh king here, king here, king here, king here, king here, king here, king here. Let's do that. I'm just gonna try to run around and infiltrate like this. I still have to be careful about his pass pawn. Okay, he's also just running back with his king. Hmm. Okay, king b6, king d2 I'm expecting. And if king a4, there's king c3. King goes here, then he puts his king here. And then if king goes here, he checks. So I'm going to stop right here. Now my plan is to get a pawn on f4. Like really, if I get a pawn on f4, then I'm fixing his pawns on light squares, and that's going to be good. Okay, so he moves his king. Let's just pull this bishop back first. I'm trying to get this bishop to be a bit more active. He pulls his bishop back. Maybe he's trying to prevent this. Let's go bishop d7. f5 followed by f4 is the plan. If I play f5 and then he plays g3, then maybe I'm still going to play f4. But I have to be careful with my pawns on light squares. So he's actually just playing it very defensive and very passive. That could actually haunt him. Let's go f5. Eventually, I'm going to pull my king back to d6. You guys are watching endgame technique. King up. If I push, he has king up. So let's go here. And then the plan is to push king up, king up. And then his king is going to be in a little mating net. And then g6. Okay, that's an interesting move. Usually, if you're trying to win, you don't want to trade pawns. So let's just play king up. And if he takes, my king is very active. Otherwise, I'm trying to take, king takes, check. And then after the king move, then I play king up. And my king is very active. Okay, I also saw that as well. So he played h4. Hmm. It's actually a bit harder to win now. How do we do this? All right, let's pull this bishop back. E4 eventually is going to be a plan just to have the pass pawn, but I need this bishop to be as active as possible. I'm thinking about playing a5 with the idea of playing a4, but if I play a5, he plays a4, and I'm not seeing how I'm going to be able to attack this pawn. So I also have another plan of taking this pawn and then running my king over here, but then his pass pawn may be a bit too fast. So g3, now he's fixing his pawns on dark squares. Let's go bishop h5, trying to get my bishop just a bit more active. Then he moves the king. Okay. Takes, takes. Maybe get my king here and push. I have a pass pawn. That's definitely going to be a draw. If I push, he goes king here, but that's fine. Now I'm going to push my pawn. It's not the easiest game to win. I also have an idea of getting my bishop on this diagonal just to attack his pawn. And if my bishop is on this diagonal, then I should be able to try to get my king around here. But that is also hard. And he's actually just wasting moves now, which not necessarily wasting move. What he's doing is called waiting move. That's what he's doing. He's waiting. He's trying to hold the position because he believes it's a draw. But maybe I'm going to play g5. I think the position is drawn, but I'm trying to find a way to win this. Okay, let's get the bishop back first. I know he's going to continue to wait. Now, maybe I don't need to get the bishop back. Where do I need my bishop? Maybe on g4. I'm going to play g5 eventually. And if he's really trying to draw this game, then he needs to trade all the pawns. Okay, let's take. Good. Now I'm going to try to get my king on the e5 square. And that's going to be just a bit progress. Okay, let's just waste one move to get him to waste a move and then try to get my king here. What he needs to do now though is move his bishop. Yeah, he moves the bishop. Okay, hit. the pawn. King guards the pawn. There's also rolling this pawn up the board that I need to be aware of. So hit the pawn, push, push, push. Bishop back, push, bishop up, push. All right, let's go king back. I didn't want his king to get access here, but I don't want him rolling this pawn up the board. This guy's playing some chess. Like, I expected him to play the endgame a bit worse, but he's playing the endgame very well. Okay, let's see. All right, let's go here, hit the pawn. Bishop here I'm expecting. And then I'm going to go bishop here and get this diagonal. Okay, he guards it this way. That seems a bit inaccurate, actually. Because once I just move my bishop and maintain the attack here, I'm assuming he's going to pull his king back. And then I'm going to be able to get access here. If he push, then I take, and I'm still going to be able to get access here. Which doesn't mean it's winning, but it's just slightly good for me. So I take, he took, push, king back, doesn't work. So let's go king here first. Let's go king here first. Then he's trying to go here. And if I push, he goes here. The issue with my position is anytime I takes, his pass pawn is going to roll. Let's play a5. The plan is to push, and if he takes, I take. So maybe he's going to play a4, which is very strong. All right, I'm going to try to infiltrate with my king around here. But oh no, that was bad. That was so bad, bro. Come on. Because now he's able to put his king here, and then it's just drawn. Yeah, this is drawn now. Okay, well, I'm not sure if he needed to put his king there, because now I'm able to try to infiltrate this way. Check. Then I'm going to try to check him here, force away the king, then attack the bishop. It's very tricky. Bishop moves. Now I go here, and then the bishop is actually trapped. That is called an endgame grind. So he pushed the pawn, we grab the bishop. He pushed the pawn, we grab the pawn. And then this is now just completely winning. What a game. Now all I need to do is move my king and then queen my pawn. Okay, let's just take another pawn just to be sure. Here's Zhang. More Caro-Kann defense against 1400 players. Stick around. Opponent is now 1400. More Caro-Kann coming your way. So we're playing d5, regardless of what they do. The exchange, the advanced, the classical, the fantasy. What will we see? We're seeing the advanced variation of the Caro-Kann. Now, once they do this, you can play this move pawn to c5. I really like c5 because it targets their center immediately. And the whole point of the Caro-Kann is to ensure that we're able to get to our light squared bishop outside of this pawn chain. So if you're going to play the Caro-Kann and then play e6 and blocking your bishop, might as well you play the French defense. So he plays c3. Now we play knight c6, just trying to apply as much pressure as possible to that pawn on d4. And especially now that he plays knight f3, it's the absolute perfect time to play bishop g4 because I'm applying pressure to the knight, which is the main defender of the pawn. You see how quickly he plays h3? Do not give up your bishop for knights, guys. But unless you have a reason to do it, because now once I take the knight, I gain something. What do I gain? If he takes with the pawn, he doubles up his pawns. If he takes with the queen, it's a drawback mistake because the queen is no longer guarding the pawn on d4. And now I have two pieces attacking d4. He only has the pawn guarding d4. So once we take on d4, 7 moves into the Caro-Kann and we are already ahead by a pawn. And that's why he played the move bishop to b5 because now he wants to take on d4 and then I'm not going to be able to take because of the pin. So let's take on c3 first, just grabbing another pawn. And there's some drawbacks to this because the moment I take on c3, I'm also helping the opponent to develop his knight. Now, if you look on my position, I only have one piece developed. The only piece that is developed, it is also pinned. He has 3 pieces developed. His king is ready to get castled. So literally in 2 moves, he's going to finish his development. The thing is, the Caro-Kann defense is a very solid opening. It's one of those lines where because you have no real weaknesses, it's very hard for the opponent to immediately start attack on you. So I'm actually just going to finish my development here. I'm not going to play anything like a6 though, because playing a6, it could be wasting time. I'm still going to prioritize developing. I'm going to prioritize developing my pieces as quickly as I possibly can. So I'm thinking of putting the bishop on c5, but I have to worry about a rook going on c8 once that happens and my bishop is going to be unprotected. I like the idea of playing knight to e7 Let's just go knight e7 first. Yes, I'm blocking out my bishop, but eventually I could go a6, hit this bishop, and then I could take with the actual knight. And then if I take with the knight, my bishop could go on the e7 square, and then I castle. Very, very solid. I'm also thinking of options where I put the knight on g6. Okay, for example, now that he puts the bishop on f4, knight g6 makes it even a bit better for me because time is very important here because the guy's development is literally finished. Now, I'm not going to say I'm winning. I'm just going to say I'm ahead by a pawn. What I have is the extra pawn. What my opponent has is the development. So I can't get greedy and try to grab pawns or anything here. I need to finish my development as quickly as possible. Do not move the same piece more than once in the opening. But now I'm going to do it. Why? Because I still get tempo on his bishop. And okay, if he does not move the bishop, I may not take the bishop because technically his bishop on f4 is his bad bishop, but the guy also has the bishop pair. So, maybe I just get that bishop off the board. But what I'm just prioritizing right now is just to get my bishop on e7. So he pulls the bishop back. Let's just get the bishop on e7, get the king out the center of the board. And if I do this, it means I'm better. So that's basically what's happening. White needs to get something from being down by a pawn. Black needs to ensure that he gets his king out the center and finishes development as quickly as possible. If I achieve what I need to achieve, he's just down in material. And look on what just happened. The whole time I have two attackers on e5, I couldn't take because of the pin. Now once I castle, the knight is no longer pinned. He pull his bishop back to d3. Maybe it's applying some pressure to my knight. Okay, I was about to say that's a free pawn, but it's actually not a free pawn. Maybe I should still take the pawn to simplify the position because I'm ahead in material. And here's what the opponent needs to do. Once I take on e5, he needs to take on e5, and then once I take on e5, he needs to sacrifice his bishop on h7, and then once I take, he plays queen h5 check, picking up the knight. But in that scenario, I go back, he takes the knight, I'm ahead by a pawn, I have a very solid position. Eventually, I'm thinking of bishop to f6, and once we're ahead by a pawn, I may even trade the knights off the board, swing the rooks in the game, and bring the game into the end game. Remember, some persons do not trade pieces off the board because they think, okay, I'm ahead by a pawn, but it's just a pawn. I don't want to trade. Bro, the rule says you should trade once you're ahead in material. Just trade. If your end game skill is not good, then work on your end game skills. Okay, I was also about to say he didn't sacrifice, which means now I'm ahead by 2 pawns. He plays queen to h5 because he thinks, now I'm threatening checkmate and I'm attacking his knight. But for one, I'm able to just pull the knight back to g6 and I don't lose anything. But for two, I'm the one who is ahead in material. So just getting rid of the bishop also prevents a checkmate. Now, I want you guys to notice how solid my position is. Like, I have no weaknesses in my position. Now that all my minor pieces are developed and my king is castled, I need to ensure that I get my major pieces in the game. So let's play the move rook to c8, putting the rook on the file. After this, I may move my queen to connect my rooks. And remember the goal, your king and your two rooks should be the only pieces that is left on the background. That's how you know you're no longer in the opening and you're in the middle game. Okay, let's look on the opponent's last move. He's putting his rook on the same line as my king. It's a bit alarming. So let's just play g3 here. And the reason why I'm playing g6 is because I know that he has no dark squared bishop and I have dark squared bishop. So yes, do not push pawns on the side that your king is on. But I'm not really creating any real weaknesses. I'm slightly weakening my dark squares, but the guy has no dark squared bishop. I have a dark squared bishop, so I can always go bishop to f6, bishop g7, fianchet to my bishop, cover the dark squares, and I'm chilling. I'm ahead by 2 pawns. So now he plays queen to c2. I need to move my queen so that way I connect my rooks. There's also a little trick that I'm trying to set up here with queen c7, bishop c5. And then because my bishop is going to be on the same line as his rook is going to be free. But let's start. Let me just start with bishop c5. There's no attack on my king right now, so I don't have to worry too much about putting my bishop on g7. And, maybe after he plays his next move, I go qc7 or qd6, and then I'm threatening his rook on c7. Because remember, guys, pin pieces don't protect. So at this moment, his rook on g3 is unprotected. There's also queen h4, which hits the rook, but, he's going to just play rook g4. All right, he plays knight to a4. Now, bishops are in fact better than knights, but are they better than knights when you're just ahead by 2 pawns? That's actually a $1 million question. So I'm going to give the guy the bishop in the name of simplifying the position. I'm still threatening to take his rook, but I'm assuming he puts his knight on the edge of the board to get rid of my bishop. Like, you wouldn't put your knight on the edge of the board to not take. And then from here, my least active piece is my rook on f8. So I'm actually going to take with the rook with the idea of swinging the f8 rook on c8. And there's only one full open file on the chessboard, and that's the c file. And I'm trying to take full control over the c file. Okay, he plays b4. Ah, my rook is under attack. Let's just move the rook. The good thing is I'm also attacking his unprotected pawn on b4 twice, which means I'm assuming he's going to defend the pawn, which he did. And then I swing my rook on the c file. So all my pieces are now active. I have a pass pawn on the d file, which means I'm also planning on rolling this pawn up the board. And now we're in the endgame ahead by 2 pawns. If you're one of those persons who are just not good in the endgame, and sometimes you're in the endgame with extra material and you still, for some reason, mess up the endgame, then there's a link in the description that takes you to my Patreon, and I have a full 4.5 hour course on my Patreon that teaches the end game. It's not just the end game, it teaches a lot of other stuff, but the end game course is also on the Patreon. So now he plays queen to e3. It's very important that we look on the opponent's last move to see what it's doing. The queen on e3 is pointing towards my unprotected pawn on a7. We have the better position. We're not in a rush to win the game. Let's just play pawn to b6, keeping the position solid. Now he plays rook to f3, and I'm assuming he's trying to go for some little threats, like my pawn on f7 it's my weakest pawn. But now I'm thinking about just start rolling my pawns up the board. So let's just hit him with d4. All my pieces are active. And once all your pieces are active, now you can start thinking about moving your pawns. So if you're one of those persons who move your pawns before moving your pieces, then remember to get your pieces active first. So he moves the queen. Again, I'm sure he's just trying to play queen to f6, but I don't even need to defend against this right now. I could actually wait until he plays queen f6, then I defend against it because it doesn't really do too much. Now, pass pawns must be pushed. That's what we know. So why not just roll the pawn up the board? Push the pawn. If he attacks it, I defend it. Let's just roll the pass pawn up the board. I'm just trying to see if there's any sacrificial idea that I'm missing. But usually once all your pieces are defending each other, then there's no tactic that will happen, because remember, unprotected pieces is what causes tactics in a position. So instead he uses rook to hit my pawn. If I push, he's just going to take with the queen. So I have to play this move, rook to d4, which means now I have 2 defenders. He has 2 attackers. There's still this queen f6 move, but once I play rook to, no, not rook to d8, that loses the game. I have to play rook to c7 to guard the pawn. And then if he tries to find a way to add even more attackers to my pass pawn, I can always add more defenders to the pass pawn. And then slowly but surely, my plan is to roll the pass pawn up the board. If he allows me, also trade the queens off the board and then win the game. So he did play queen f6. We were expecting that move. The only thing that he's threatening here is f7. I mean, h4, h5, h6 is also a threat that I'm slightly afraid of. But I think it takes too long. It's 3 moves. Like, in 3 moves, I can roll my pawn and play rook c1. Well, can't play rook c1 if I need to defend f7. So maybe I need to play queen d7. So let's go queen d7. I still have 2 defenders versus 2 attackers. I have 2 defenders versus 2 attackers here. If he takes, I take. And then if he takes, I take. So it's not like my queen is overworked. Now if he plays h4, I play d2 because pass pawns must be pushed. And if he plays h5, I play rook down. But what if he sacrificed the rook and then push and there's no ways to prevent mate? That was actually interesting. But instead he plays rook f4. He's doing me the honors of trading the pieces off the board. Now if I take queen takes, I'm not able to push. So, and if I push, I lose my rook. Takes, queen takes. There's rook c2. Should I play rook to d8 first? For rook d8, there's no rook c8. It's a bit tricky. Now let's just play rook to, let's go rook to d8 now. It's a bit tricky, but we're just trying to ensure that we're patient. I have 2 minutes on the clock though, so maybe not too patient. If he takes on d4, which why do people play the end game like this? Guys, just to let you guys know, the average person in chess do not play the end game. Let me tell you what he's going to do. He's going to win my pawn thinking he's winning, and I'm going to allow him to win the pawn. You know why I'm going to allow him to win the pawn? Because I'm ahead by 2 pawns. And this is now called simplification. Did you notice what is happening here? I'm the one who is ahead in material, which means I should be the one who works hard to try to trade the pieces off the board. And he was the one who initiated the trade and traded the pieces off the board. But just to let you guys know, if you're only ahead by one pawn and you're not able to win the endgame, then that's a sign that you need to get my endgame course. But just know that king and pawn endgame is mathematically winning. That's all you need to keep in mind. Step one is to centralize the king. Now we're on to step two, which is to create the pass pawn. Usually we try to fix the opponent's pawn so that way they're not able to move the pawns. And then once they're not able to move the pawns, then they're in Zugzwang, and then we roll the pass pawns up the board. But I have a minute on the clock, so I need to lock in. Okay, he moves the king. Now we play b5, just ensuring that I'm fixing his pawns. Once I fix the pawns, it's going to reach this position where he's not able to move anything. All right, so now that he push, I push, and guess what? I now have a pass pawn, which means his king is stuck defending against my pass pawn, which means I can now use the fox and the chicken coop technique, running my king over towards these pawns, grabbing these pawns, knowing that his king is not able to run because of my pass pawn. So even though this guy didn't blunder in the well, he blundered upon in the opening, but he didn't really play the middle game badly. His end game was actually bad. I'm sorry, Alamein, but your end game is bad, bro. You can't be down in material and then just start trading pieces off the board. Now I just roll my pass pawn up the board, and from here I'm just gonna create a queen and win the game. So he moves the king. Let's just roll the pawn up the board. Simple end game technique. His king is also, well, he resigns. More Caro-Kann defense against 1,500 players. Stick around. Our opponent is now 1,500, blessing you guys with some more Caro-Kann defense. So anything they play, we're going to play d5 on the next move, and then after knight c3, we take on e4. Now, knight takes c4, we go knight f6. This is why I'm recommending, by the way. Bishop f5 is also the classical variation of the Caro-Kann. Knight f6 is like the main line of the Caro-Kann. We took on f6, and we're going to be taking with the e-pawn. Once we take with the e-pawn, development becomes very easy. He develops the knight, and already we should be able to go bishop g4 because knight f3 is not like the main way to do it. But let's just focus on our king safety first. So bishop to e6, d6, and then we're going to be getting our king out the center. Bishop to c4. Now we get the king out the center of the board. The idea is to check, which is why he also got his king out the center. And from here, let's play rook to e8. This is how I usually recommend that we do it. So the rook goes to e8, and then the knight on b8 goes all the way over to f8. And then that's usually when we use the time to develop our light squared bishop. Like our light squared bishop is usually going to either g4 or f5 or even e6. So c3 was played. Now we go knight d7, and because he plays c3, I'm expecting him to play this move, queen to b3, which will be applying some pressure to the f7 pawn twice, and I am only guarding it with my king. But if he does that, then I should be able to play rook e7. So that's what he did. So he has two attackers on a battery pointing towards f7, so I need to add more defenders. So that's why I'm going to play the move rook to e7, just defending my pawn first, and then I'm going to be playing knight to f8. And then once I play knight f8, my bishop goes to either g4 or f5 or e6, all depending on the position. And there is a lot of times when we're able to play this move pawn to b5. And especially now that his bishop is being annoying and his queen is being annoying, I think I'm going to play pawn b5, because if you play pawn b5, your bishop on e6 could eventually go to d5. So bishop to d2, and let's hit him with immediate. Wait, let's think about it first. Yeah, let's go it. I was wondering if he's able to sack and then go queen d5, hit the unprotected rook, hit the unprotected bishop, but knight b6 hits the queen, guard the bishop, and I'm safe. So he pulls the bishop back. Now we pull our knight back. And there's this saying in chess that says, there is no mate with a knight on f8. And because I'm just protecting my pawn on h7. So even if the queen goes back to c2, I'm fine. Okay, rook to e1. He's trying to get all his pieces active, which is a good way to play. Now, I could take the rook and then go bishop e6, but remember, to take is a mistake, and you should only trade if it improves your position. So let's just continue with our development, and I'm developing with tempo. I develop my bishop, and I'm attacking his queen at the same time. So once he moves his queen, I mean, maybe c4 is a move, but I'm not afraid of c4. I should be able to take and go rook to b8. But once he moves his queen, we now finish our development, get the major pieces in the game. So now I'm going to play the move queen to c7, just connecting my rooks. Some ideas of playing rook to e8, doubling up on the e file. And I'm also creating this battery on his h2 pawn, which is why he played h3, because, you know, he noticed what is happening here. But there's a lot of times when, because they play h3, we're now able to play moves like queen d7, and then we're going to be sacrificing on h2. So that could also be a very dangerous line. But because of how principled I am, I don't feel comfortable playing without one of my pieces doing anything. And now my rook on a8 is just not doing anything. So let's play rook to e8. Notice how I have every single piece on the chessboard that is having a role. And then he plays rook to e2, which means he's also trying to double up his rooks on the e file. So now let's think. If I go q d7 and he go rook e1 and then I sack, anytime he takes, I takes. Nah, that should not work. What if I go bishop to d5? Because bishop to d5 hits the knight. The knight doesn't really have good forward moves. If the knight has to go back, then that's annoying. So let's put the bishop on d5. And this is exactly what I was telling you guys about. You don't want a bishop on d5 if you're not able to play b5. Because then they're just going to play c4 and chase away your bishop. But now if they play c4, you're just going to take. And bishop d5 is applying pressure to the knight on f3. And if he allows it, we are definitely giving up that bishop for the knight because it exposes the opponent's king. Okay, rook e3 is a very interesting move. It's very interesting because he sees the threat, he defends against the threat. If I takes, he's going to play rook takes. So I'm thinking about getting rid of the rook first. The issue with this is, if I get rid of the rook first, he's not going to take with the bishop. He's actually going to take with the pawn. And then now if I take, he's going to play rook takes. And I'm giving up my bishop for no reason. Another move I'm looking on is bishop f4, but then he's going to take on e7. And then once I take back, maybe he goes bishop takes. And then after queen takes, I'm not necessarily seeing if I have much. So let's just use the time to bring even more pieces in the game. So even though I have every single piece doing something, I still need to follow the principle of the least active piece. I still need to ask, what piece do I have that is not really doing much? How do I get that piece in the game? And that's where this knight on f8 comes in. Because yes, it's guarding the pawn on h7, but usually the purpose of this knight on f8 is to eventually put it on g6 to join the attack on the opponent's king. And if they decide to give up the bishop for the knight, we take with the h pawn. We have this very famous pawn cube, and our king will just never be checkmated or in any dangers of getting checkmated. Then he plays rook to e1, and I believe that is actually a drawback mistake. Like, it looks like it doesn't do anything. But remember everything that I just explained. Look at this. Before, if I took this rook, he takes with the pawn, I take the bishop, he does not get double pawns. Now, because he plays rook to e1, what if I take the knight now? He will get double pawns. Why? He's not able to take with the rook because I have the battery lining up towards his rook. And if I take, yes, he could first take my rook, but if he takes my rook first, okay, I don't care. I'm just going to take back. I don't even care how I take back. All I know is eventually his pawn has to take and his king is going to be exposed. So again, do not give up your bishops for knights. Bishops are better than knights, but there is also a but. In this case, I can tell you why I'm giving up my bishop for the knight, because I'm trying to expose his king. Okay, so he took with the rook. I can always take with the bishop and just try to keep more pieces on the board, but that doesn't really like it's the most productive thing to do. So let's just take. And if he decides to take on e7 first, I should be able to take with the queen. And now my queen has a decent open file, but I could say his king is now slightly exposed. So from here, I want you guys to also tell you another thing about chess. Unprotected pieces causes tactics in a position. So your ability to see what piece is unprotected in the position, that is going to help you to get better at chess. So for example, I'm able to see that this is unprotected, this is unprotected, this is unprotected. How am I able to attack them? And the first thing I notice is I'm able to play this move knight h4, but we're looking on the opponent's pieces and he has this battery pointing towards h7. We're not trying to lose h7 because after he takes and I move the king, he goes back to e4 and he's guarding. But these two are unprotected. And that's why I'm going to hit him with this move, queen to e6. Because now I'm attacking his pawn on h3 and I'm attacking his pawn on a2. And the best thing for him to do is to not lose this pawn, because if I take this pawn, eventually he could be getting checkmated. So I'm expecting this move bishop to f5. It's a very aggressive way to defend. It's like, okay, offense is the best defense, but I'm just going to take the pawn on e2 and just grind out the endgame. So now we just grab this pawn. We're now ahead by a pawn. Very nice. It's also very important that you're able to identify what your weaknesses are as well. So, for example, my pawn on c6 is weak because it cannot be guarded by another pawn. My pawn on a7, it's not unprotected, so it's not necessarily weak. So I think my weakest pawn is c6, and I notice the opponent has a lot of pressure on h7. Once I'm able to see these things as well, it makes it a bit harder for me to blunder. You know, he plays b3. I think he's just trying to going to the end game. But that cannot be the right strategy because you're down by a pawn, bro. It's crazy how person's brain work. It's like they think they have a higher chance of drawing when they're playing a higher rated player. But a higher rated player is their strength comes from their ability to play end games. But because this king is weak, let's just calculate if we're able to do anything to keep the queens on the board first. For example, check king up, there's this check, which is mate, which means if I check and he blocks with the bishop, then there's this move which PP on the PP, which means if I check, he has to block with the queen. And the question is, I'm gonna trade if he blocks with the queen, but do I want to take the queen here or do I want to take the queen here? Like, it could make a difference. The guy has the bishop here. I have the knight and the bishop. I also need to ensure that I do not trade my knight for the dark squared bishop because it's gonna go in opposite colored bishop and I could lose that game. So let's start by checking on a1, still trade the queens, but it also gives the opponent some chances of blundering. Sometimes you should give your opponent a chance to blunder. For example, the guy played king to g2. You see what I told you? I was planning on trading the queens. I wasn't planning on tricking the guy. But guess what? That's just a checkmate. More Caro-Kann defense against 1,600 players. Stick around. Your opponent is now 1,600, blessing you guys with some more Caro-Kann defense. Let's go d5. And knight d2, we take on e4. And whenever they go knight to d2, it's a sign that we may see the alien gambit, which we're not seeing. This is the Tartakower variation of the Caro-Kann, and usually knight f3 is not the main move. We know how to develop here. The bishop goes to d6, we castle the king, we pull the knight back to f8, put the bishop on e6, and then we try to start some attack on their king. So let's get the king out the center of the board. And yes, there will be a video in the membership section of YouTube where you learn the full theory on the Caro-Kann of me just explaining the moves, breaking down the moves. If you do not have access to the membership, then get access to the membership now. I don't know the cost, but I think it's very low. I think it's like $3 or something like that. So he got his king out the center of the board. And let's continue with the plan. So the rook goes to e8 and the knight goes to f8. The purpose of putting the knight to f8 is to, one, defend our pawn on h7, but two, our knight could join the attack once we play knight g6. So he plays h3 to prevent me from pinning him, but this is actually going to help me in the future because now I'm thinking about playing moves like bishop e6, queen d7, sacrifice on h3, and then I'm just chilling. So he plays c3. Now we go knight f8. There's no mate with a knight on f8. And even if he tries to go queen c2, h7 is already guarded. So he develops the bishop. Now I develop my bishop. So again, what are we doing? We're completing our development. He got his rook in the game. Now we play queen to d7. So already I'm setting up some sacrificial ideas on h3, which he has to be careful about. But this sacrifice, it doesn't always work. For example, now I'm looking on it. If I takes, his bishop goes back, hit the queen, and I do not have a way to immediately do something. Usually the sack is good when the queen is not guarding the knight. So after takes, you immediately gain tempo on the knight. Well, he moves the knight, so takes. H2 is now unprotected. And if the bishop goes to f1, that's mate. If the knight goes to f1, it's kind of like the same thing. There's no mate with a knight on f8. So he could go knight f1. If he goes knight f1, then my plan becomes to mate him on g2. So then I'm going to play knight g6. And how is he going to prevent knight h4? Maybe I should play knight g6 first. Let's play knight g6 first. I'm sure I should sack here. Takes. Nah, I can't. Because after takes queen check. Queen f3 is going to be an issue, and I don't want to trade. So checking over, and I can't check because of the queen. So let's continue with the plan. Let's go knight g6. And remember we said this is the whole plan of the knight on g6 anyways. And if a bishop ever takes on g6, you take with the h-pawn, you have a very nice pawn cube, and then you're just chilling. Knight e4 is also extremely annoying. Very annoying move, knight e4. And it's actually crazy because I play this line against the Caro-Kann myself, so I shouldn't fall for knight e4 here. The reason why knight e4 is so annoying is because he's clearly threatening to just get the bishop here. And if I pull this bishop back, he's going to play knight c5. But that's fine. Let's just pull the bishop back. Because if he still decides to play knight c5, at least I can go queen d6 because the knight is no longer on f3. And if he takes on e6, I could go queen h2 first with check. And then then I take. And then my queen is going to be very annoying and he could lose the game. So my b7 pawn is hanging. I don't want to lose the bishop here. So I'm also thinking of just pulling the bishop all the way back to c8, which is like setting up back the pieces on their starting position. That's never a good sign. There's also bishop to d5, allowing him to take. But usually the best way to defend against this sacrifice or just this mate is to play f4. But now f4, I'm able to take on f4. It's very tricky. G3, if he plays G3, I take on H3. It is very tricky. Play G3, which means there is a drawback. H3 is no longer guarded, but my pawn on B7 is not guarded. So it's very tricky. I think I'm going to take on H3 though, because I mean, I'm trading a pawn over here for a pawn on his king side. That has to be a bargain. And if he takes it the queen, I go QD5 and I'm threatening mate. And he has to find bishop F1. After bishop F1, I'm also thinking about knight H4 with the idea of forking him here. I don't think it works though, because after takes, check, it does work. Whoa, it does work. Let's just take. Because if he takes QD, okay, I didn't see this. I didn't see that. I was expecting him to take. Like he didn't take. So I'm just ahead by a clean pawn. It's like my bishop is under attack and my pawn here is under attack. It's not a move that I want to play, but let's not lose the pawn. Wait, it's very tricky this position. Because if I pull the bishop all the way back to c8, then he plays bishop f4, which hits the queen. I can't take because h7 is hanging. My rook is unprotected. At that point, if I takes, rook takes, rook takes, the moment I move my queen, he takes here first. And then if I takes, that's mate. Okay, that was very weird. Let's just pull the bishop back to e6. Yeah, let's just do that. And we're gonna have to give him back the pawn on b7. But I'm fine with that. Like if he takes, I'm thinking of just qd5, hit the queen, get my bishop on d5, and I'm chilling. Bishop f4 is still a bit scary, but not as much as before. Because if bishop f4, I could actually consider just taking. Because yes, the queen is able to take, but once I move the king, I'm chilling. Even if he checks, I move. And eventually once he takes, I have queen takes, and it's both of us king is not safe. But it's very scary, and I may not need to complicate the game like that. All right, so he did take on b7, which means my queen is under attack. I have some ideas of eventually playing rook to b8, hit, then I take this pawn, but we have to fix the issue here first. So let's just move the queen to d5, hit the queen. If he takes, I may go bishop takes. There's also pawn takes. I'm not sure which one is better. Bishop takes, there's c4, but I'm able to play bishop f3. Like, which one do I really want to take with? If pawn takes, he's going to immediately pull back the knight, and that's a tempo on my bishop anyways. So let's take with the bishop. And if he plays c4, bishop f3. Like, white is not doing too bad here. I have to be careful. Knight c5 is a move. If he allows me to play rook to b8, hit the knight and skewer this pawn, then he's going to be in trouble. Pawn c4, rook b8. Nah. Pawn c4, bishop f3. Okay, he pulls the knight back. That's a strong knight. My knight has no forward move. So I'm thinking about regrouping, like just putting my knight somewhere else. Let's just hit this knight on d6 for the time being. He also has more time on the clock than me, so I have to be careful. I'm expecting b4. If b4, then I should be able to play a5 just to try to get my rook in the game. Because remember, pawn breaks helps with getting our pieces active. Okay, he puts the knight back on b7. That's kind of weird. It is attacking my bishop though. Let's just go bishop all the way back to f8. I mean, he is able to pull the knight back to c5, because maybe I'm not going to be giving up my bishop for a knight. Maybe I will just to double up his pawns. But putting the knight on b7 was kind of weird. He played immediate b4. He sees what is coming. Because now if I play rook b8, knight c5 and he's fine. Maybe I take the one, then put my rook on the second. I would love to play a5, but knight takes is very strong. I would love to play f5, f4, but the bishop guards the square as well. So how to improve the activity of my pieces? Thinking about playing h5, h4. Like, I'm not seeing any huge threat that he has. So let's go h5, h4. And again, guys, notice how the moment I'm trying to develop a plan, I'm thinking about pawn breaks, because that's how you plan. You think about the pawn breaks. Now he pulls the knight back. Now I go a5. And I'm going to play a5 because my pawn on a7 is isolated. It's not unprotected. And if he allows me to take on b4, then my rook gets the open file. a3 here is not a bad move, because if I takes, he plays c takes and he has a pass pawn. So maybe if he plays a3, I'm just going to keep the tension. Yeah, he plays a3. Now I play h4, which blundered a pawn. Oh, that blundered a pawn. I'm playing a bit too fast, but my time is running out. The reason why it blunders a pawn is because of some removing the guard tactic. If you notice, my knight is the only piece guarding my bishop. So if he takes my bishop, he takes the pawn. Like it's not too bad losing that pawn though, to be honest, because at least I could say I have the bishop here. Like the fact that all his pawns are rolling up the board on this side, that's more alarming. Now, by the way, I have a video on how to beat the Caro-Kann. So it's somewhere on YouTube. You just type in Akeem beat Caro-Kann or something like that, and you'll find it. And this is actually the recommended line that I suggested. So he pulls the bishop back to F1. I'm assuming he's trying to trade. Or maybe he just doesn't want me to push. If I takes, he takes, and he's fine. But at least I'm able to pull the knight back and then go knight F5. If I takes, rook takes. I also have nothing. So let's just take here. The time is running out, so we have to be fast here. We have to be fast. I'm just trying to see if there's any little ideas in the position. There's also B4, which is very, very strong. Like the moment he pushes this pawn, there's just going to be so many pawns rolling up the board. Oh, shoot. Wait. The rook is overworked. Maybe I should have took here first because if I didn't even see this, this was accident, guys. I didn't see this, but if he had taken, I would have took and then take, and he would have lost his bishop, which is why I needed to take here first. But he eventually saw it and then he pushed, which means I'm ahead by a pawn. Love that, love that. If I takes, there's king take. So let's just take here first, assuming he's gonna take back. And once I takes king takes, I pull my bishop back to d5, and we are chilling. There's knight here, but that doesn't work. I need to take here just to confirm my extra pawn. He took with the king. My bishop is under attack. We centralize the bishop. He has two very, let's not say very strong pass pawn, but this is a very strong pass pawn because it's, and he's also putting the rook behind the pass pawn. Very principled guy. How do I make progress from here? Oh my God, what to do? All right, let's just play f5 with the idea of playing f4. There's bishop e7 with the idea of playing bishop to h4 because his king and his rook is on the same line. So f5 threatens both f4, bishop e7, and bishop h4. All right, he's trying to trade my very strong bishop. That makes a lot of sense. And then once I takes, he take his king off of that line. I don't want to take because it helps him. Backside, wait. All right, let's just hit the bishop. I need to find a way to start rolling my pawns up the board. Like these are my pass pawns, and I need to find ways to start rolling them up the board. So he pulls the bishop back. Check, he hits the king. And then I play g5 with maybe f3 ideas. Oh, but he's threatening to take and then take. So king up. Let's take here first. If rook takes, knight f3 is not bad. Bishop takes. I still go knight f3. So now I'm hitting the bishop and this pawn. His bishop now has to move. The pass pawn is just so scary. I want to start rolling my pass pawns just to scare him. Like I know that his pass pawns are faster. Guy's not even, he doesn't even care. Because if I take, he's gonna push. And if I go here, he goes here. That is so strong. So maybe I should take. Rook takes. Okay, maybe I should go here. Let's try this. So that way, if he push, I takes, rook takes, and then take. Oh my God, I blundered. Like once I blunder this pawn, it's over, right? Yeah. Okay, let's take here. Now he's hitting the rook and the bishop. Okay, let's hit the knight. Have to take. And if he push, I go knight back. Knight back protects the b8 square, luckily. Bishop c7 is very strong. It wins back the pawn. But I have to try this to ensure that he doesn't queen. And once he takes, oh, this is lost. Fudge. What? Oh, that's not even mate. Is this mate? No, it's not even mate, yo. Damn. Yeah, this is just lost. Good game, bro. Good game. More Caro-Kann defense against 1700 players. Stick around. The opponent is now 1700. Let's lock in and play some Caro-Kann defense. So we go d5. He plays knight c3. We take on c3. And once he plays knight takes c4, we play knight f6. So he took on f6. This is the Tartakawa variation of the Caro-Kann. We take with the e-pawn, and let's see how he's going to choose to develop his pieces here. This is also one of my students, guys, and I just remember we did a lesson and I showed him how to play against the Caro-Kann. Knight f3 was not what I showed you, bro, but I guess he's just trying to play what he's comfortable with. But knight to f3, let's just develop our pieces normally. The plan is to get the king out the center, get the knight to d7, get the bishop out, and then play some chess. So bishop has been developed. We get our king out the center of the board. He got his king out the center of the board. And I'm wondering, do I play rook e1, knight d7, knight here? Or do I play bishop g4? Let's try bishop to g4 first, because that 1600 game that I just played, it was a bit shaky, you know? So he plays c3. Let's go knight to d7 as well. And then maybe after I can go rook to e8. There's also queen to c7, which targets his pawn on h2. But once I play queen c7, he's definitely going to play h3. Okay, he plays h3 a bit early, and I'm just going to pull the bishop back to h5, maintaining the pin on the knight, and I still want to go queen c7, but there's also this idea where I could go rook c8, bishop b8, queen c7, and I think that's a bit more aggressive because it applies even more pressure to h2, but this guy decides that he wants to push pawns on the side that his king is on, which is kind of crazy. But let's see, if he takes, I'm going to take, we're still going to get the pawn cube. But maybe I'm not gonna go with bishop c8 anymore. Who knows? Let's see. h4. Bro, are you aware that your king is over here? Who is this guy's coach? Wait, let's see. So he is clearly trying to play h5. Once he plays h5, that's when I'm gonna take his bishop. And then the queen is gonna take. So let's just play some normal chess. Let's actually just go queen c7 and connect to our rooks. If he plays h5, then we take. And then I'm gonna just play normal, knowing that he's exposing his king. All right, so he develops his bishop to e3, trying to punish this guy so badly. There's pawn c5. Maybe I'm not going to play that just yet. Let's play rook to e8. Let's go rook to e8 first. Apply some pressure to the bishop. There's actually some cool ideas where, okay, I was about to say I sack and then try to get my queen on g3, but he saw that. He plays king g2, and then now I'm going to go knight to f8. So there's still plans of me putting my knight on g6. There's plans of me putting my knight on e6 and then to f4. And this f4 square is a weakness, guys. Remember, a weakness in chess is a pawn or square that can't be guarded by another pawn. So f4 can't be guarded by another pawn. f3 can't be guarded by another pawn. Those are the squares that I'm going to try to target. But it's also very important that I have all my pieces in the game. So rook e7 followed by rook e8, just doubling up on the file is also an idea. Sometimes you could put your rook on c8 and play c5. Sometimes you could put your rook on d8 and then play c5. Okay, rook h1. Guy's just trying to attack me. That's what he's trying to do. He's trying to attack me. I guess he's trying to play h5, but I'm going to wait on him to play h5, then I take. And he's going to want to play h6, so maybe I play h6 myself. So, okay, there's knight h4 to f5. So maybe I need to play g6. I'm not even sure. But one thing I know about chess, it says if your opponent is trying to attack you on the king side, you want to counterattack in the center. So I'm actually going to go ahead and just play c5 and counterattack in the center. I'm not going to try to waste too much time doubling up the rooks on the e file, especially since I'm not seeing any good sacrifices on e3. So if he takes, I takes. If he takes, I takes, and then this is perfect for me because I don't know what he's doing. King seems to be not the safest. I can't attack it just yet though. So he plays h5, hits the bishop. Now I have to take. Then he takes with the queen. Now the question is, how do we play here? Because maybe he wants to play g6. If he plays h6, I play g6. I should be safe. Maybe he wants to play g5. Do I want to take on d4? Do I want to play c6 and pin the knight? I think I want to take on d4, but then after pawn d4, the rook could get the file. Taking on d4 also helps him to centralize the bishop. It also helps him to centralize the knight. So let's just go rook to d8 here. Again, let's get all our pieces in the game. There's also ideas of playing knight e6. So the e6 knight could go to f4 in the future. This pawn is unprotected, by the way, so I'm trying to set up some tactics where I'm attacking that pawn. Remember, unprotected pieces causes tactics, but if I only attack the unprotected pawn, it's just one weakness. He's just going to defend it. Okay, he puts his rook on c1. That's definitely a sign that if I take, he's going to take with the pawn. So I should be able to go queen g4, hit this pawn. It's also not a easy pawn to defend. It's kinda annoying trying to defend that pawn unless he plays queen f5, which is not too bad. But then his pawn is gonna be overexerted on f5. Knight e6 first is definitely an idea. Okay, I think I have a nice little idea here. Let's take on d4. If he takes with the pawn, not only does he has an iso pawn, I'm going to play this cute little move, queen a5, which attacks his pawn on a2. And then I'm going to play queen to d5, assuming he guards the pawn. Now, personally, I actually don't think he needs to guard that pawn because if I takes, there's rook here. But I know if I get my queen on the d5 score, it's going to be very annoying. So let's go queen a5, and immediately I'm trying to play queen d5. I'm expecting a3 or b3. But again, this is not one of those pawns that you have to guard. There's also queen b3, which prevents queen d5. It's not bad, bro. That's not bad. I was about to disown him as a student, but he's playing some decent moves. Because I'm sure I should not take this pawn. I can't, because if I do, he takes here. The good thing is, after I takes, my king is still gonna be safe. Takes, bishop takes, hit the rook. I think I have to take. Or maybe I could play f5. f5 is really nice here. Because f5 comes with some f4 ideas and f5 comes with rook e4 ideas. And f5 doesn't open the position. If I takes bishop takes, my rook is under attack, and that's annoying. Now there is bishop e7, takes takes, and then his pawn on e4 becomes a real weakness. So that's also one way to play. But I think f5 is the more complex way to play. And because I have a little bit more time on the clock than him, I want to complicate the game a bit. So that way he uses up more of his time to think. So f5 hits the bishop. Queen to d5 centralizes the queen. Anytime he plays g6, then it will be a free pawn. And if he plays h6, I play g6. I will... Oof. Wait. If he plays h6, I play g6. My dark squares are weak. And then he plays d5. And just the plans of getting his queen on g7 is very strong. But he plays a3. He's scared. He doesn't want to lose his pawn. Scaredy cat. All right, push it the bishop. Bishop hits the queen. Go here. Pins the knight. Rook e4 I like because it threatens this. Rook e4 I really like. Let's go rook e4. Now I have him in defensive. I have him in a defensive state. Even if rook e4 doesn't work, which my plan with rook e4 is to play queen d5, rook e4, then after the check I take. I don't want to just play rook e4 because it checks his king. I want to get something for it. I think you needed to play h6, bro. Like h6 followed by d5. And then you're going to be able to attack on g7. And it's crazy because he's very good at playing positional chess, slowly improving his position. And he says he wants me to help him on playing more aggressive chess. And he has the chance to attack me. And he is still wasting time protecting a pawn when he should have went for my king. d4. Okay, check is the plan. I wanted to play queen to d5 anyways. Now I'm threatening queen to d5, winning your knight. His time is running. He's getting nervous. Oh, am I going to lose this game? And his pawn on d4 is just isolated. Knight e6 is coming very soon. Yeah, now this position is very nice. Who is this guy's coach, yo? Damn, why would you play rook to h4? My queen is on the same line as your king, bro. The knight is pinned. That's a rook. Like maybe he thinks the knight guards the rook. Watch this. Maybe he's gonna try to capture it and then he's gonna be like, wait, is something wrong with my mouse? But that's a rook, bro. He resigns. More Caro-Kann defense against 1800 players. Stick around. Opponent is now 1800. More Caro-Kann defense coming your way. So let's hit him with d5. Let's see what version of the Caro-Kann he's gonna play. There's knight c3, there's the advance, there's the fantasy, there's the exchange. Okay, he plays knight d2. Now, knight d2 is kind of the same thing as knight c3 because we are going to take on e4. The thing is, though, witty alien usually puts his knight on d2, so I'm kind of expecting that this guy's going to go for the alien gambit. If he goes for the alien gambit, then it's going to be good because then I'm going to be able to show you guys how to beat the alien gambit. If not, then he's probably going to take on f6. Let's see. Okay, he plays knight to g3, and it's funny because I just talked to a student the other day, and I told him that, bro, Knight g3 is only good when they play bishop f5. Knight g3 is in fact just wasting time. And whenever your opponent wastes time, it's a sign that they're breaking principle, and you should also break principle. Not just waste a move, a random move, but try to punish them for wasting time. And that's why I like this move h5. Now he plays h4, so his knight is now looking a bit wobbly on the d3 square. And from here, it's just development. Let's develop the bishop to g4, developing and attacking the queen. If he plays f3, then the knight is really wobbly on g3. And I may even leave my bishop hanging and then play queen c7 first, just to get the tempo on his knight. So I'm expecting him to play something like bishop e2, just a normal way to defend. And from here, I'm thinking of just playing e6, just finishing my development. And this is already just a very solid position. Like, if you're a Caro-Kann player, it means you're a solid player. So first get the solid position. And whenever you have solid position, it may confuse your opponent and it makes them overly aggressive, and then you win the game that way. Or they overexert their position, and because of the overexertion of their position, you bring them in an endgame, and then you also win that way. So bishop to g5 is pinning my knight. If I go bishop e7, he gets rid of the knight, and he could be winning material on g4, so I have to be careful. Now, usually when the bishop moves, then that's a sign that queen to a5 check is good, because if the bishop goes back to d2 trying to gain a tempo on your queen, you just put your queen on maybe c7 or b6, and that's a good diagonal. If they play c3, then you playing queen to a5 is like a tempo. And now you're able to play knight d7, and they can't think about any removing the guard ideas because your knight defends the knight. So he did play c3, which means that's also a sign that he's not going to castle on the queen side because he's already pushing pawns on the side that his king is on. Let's just continue with our development. Knight d7. Again, we're developing. We're trying our best to only move our pieces once. Apparently, he's able to play f3. I didn't think about this, but if he plays f3, my bishop should not be trapped. I mean, worst case scenario, I pull it back to f5 and he gets the bishop here. But if he plays f3, he's taking away the square from his knight, and I will be able to play bishop d6 first and attack his unprotected knight. So I kind of want him to play f3. What I don't want him to force me to do is to take his bishop, because to take is a mistake. And if I take the bishop, I'm helping his development. So he plays the move knight f3, developing his knight. Let's go bishop d6 and look on our position. We have all four minor pieces developed. We already moved the queen, which means once we castle the king, our development is going to be complete. I am not planning on castling on the king side though, because I already played h5. So I'm more than likely going to castle on the queen side. And usually persons say, bro, I do not blunder in the opening. Like, I'm coming out to the opening stage of the game, but I just don't know how to plan. After the opening, I'm lost. If that is you, then you need to learn about pawns. You need to be able to look on the position and say, where are my pawn bricks? So if you're someone who don't know how to plan, remember that question. Where does the pawn meet? So for example, pawn e5 is a pawn brick because I'm able to meet my pawn on e5 with his pawn on d4. Pawn c5 is a pawn brick because I'm able to do a brick there as well. Okay, he got his king out the center of the board. I could grab the knight and double up his pawns. Does it do me any justice though? That's the thing. Because if I take stakes, I could hit him with knight e4, hit the pawn, hit the bishop, and his king is slightly exposed. But then once he plays bishop f4, he's defending everything. I do not like that for myself. Now, because he castled on the king side, I could consider castling on the king side, but it's kind of risky. That's kind of risky. So let's just get the king castled on the queen side. And it's going to be a crazy game. But in terms of attacking, I don't think white has any issues starting an attack on my king. But the position is solid. So if he wants to attack, which is what he's immediately going for, I don't think I have any real immediate weakness that he's going to start attacking now. In fact, now I'm able to pull my queen back to c7. And remember the other thing that we talk about, guys, like, you generally don't want to be playing defensive move. I just played a defensive move. But was it a real defensive move? Seeing that I created a battery and now I'm the one who is attacking his knight twice. So even if you have to play a move where you're defending, ensure that you move that piece away where you attack something. That way you regain the initiative. Now, maybe he has to play knight h1. Nobody wants to play knight h1. Knight h1 is actually a depressing move. And if he plays knight h1, he loses the game because bishop h2 eventually will be a checkmate, because I'm going to remove the guard on f3, then checkmate him on h2, which is why he's like, yo, I don't care about the pawn. I'm going for your king. And it's not a bad mindset. That's not a bad mindset. So we have the option of grabbing a pawn here. Grab the knight twice, take here, and then he takes, and if I takes, check, and then my king will be mated. So one thing one of my students ask is, how do we respond to pawn storm? And my answer is, Do not push the pawns on the side that your king is on. Let the pawns come to you. And then after they play something like b5, then you play something like c5. So that way you don't let them open any lines on your king. So now he took the pawn. I could take with the bishop. Taking with the bishop is interesting because it pins the f pawn, which means queen takes becomes a threat. And he's still not able to move the knight, but I prefer taking with the knight actually, because I want to keep my bishop on this diagonal. My rook is now on the same line as his queen, and if he moves the queen, I'm still going to be winning the pawn on g6. So his attack didn't really go anywhere. Like it's going to take him a while for his attack to go anywhere. But now I have two threats. The fact that the rook is on the same line as the queen is me threatening a discovered attack. And the fact that I have two attackers on his knight on g3 is me threatening to win a pawn. Guy's in trouble. 14 moves into the Caro-Kann. He's in trouble. All right, he moves the queen out the way. That's now just officially a pawn. Like, that's a pawn. Like, grab, grab, takes. He has the bishop here. The question is he able to trap my queen? Because I have to be a bit careful. And I don't think he's able to trap my queen. I don't think he have even an attacking move that he could play. So, okay, there's knight d4 with some bishop f4 ideas, but I'm not too afraid of that, to be honest. So let's just grab the pawn. We're now ahead by a pawn. Now we take, I mean, there's also knight e4, but let's just take. And just like that, we're ahead by a pawn. Let's see how he's going to continue here. My knight is unprotected, so I have to be looking out for some tactic. My king is not the safest. Like, if my king was on a8, then it would have been behind the pawn and it would have been a bit safer. But there's literally, well, not to use the word literally, but there's no pawns in front of my king. And because there's no pawns in front of my king, I need to be a bit careful. Wish I had the dark squared bishop, seeing that his dark squares are so weak. But I think it's best for black in this position to try to trade the pieces off the board. Now that I'm looking on the position, I have a little plan, like pulling the bishop back to f5, it gets a tempo on the queen, and then putting my knight on g4, it threatens some little checkmating ideas. But I mean, my knight is pinned and his knight is covering the h2 score, so it's not as easy as I'm making it to be. All right, so now he plays queen back to c1, which means we definitely know what he's trying to do. Because we looked on the opponent's last move. If he puts his bishop on f4, my queen is trapped and I'm losing the game. So if I go knight e4, he's still trapping the queen. I think the best thing for me to do is just get my queen out of there. Like, I got the free pawn. Let's just get the queen out of there. I want to go knight d3 eventually, but no, my queen is at risk of getting trapped. Knight d5 shouldn't work because of the pin. I don't like to pull my pieces back, but I think I just have to do what I have to do. I'm thinking of either qd6 or qc7. Not sure what the main difference is. There is qc7. I think he's going to go bishop f4 next regardless. So let's just go qc7. If bishop f4, there's qb6. And I'm putting my queen on the same line as his king, but he's able to be annoying and play bishop e3. At that point, I should be able to go knight e5, hit the bishop, hit the pawn. This position doesn't mean I'm completely winning, but black is definitely better. So he hits the queen. We move the queen on the same line as the king, so he has to be careful. And if he pulls the bishop back again, we go knight d5, centralizing the knight. He is able to go bishop d4 in that scenario and attack my pawn. So maybe I'm going to play f6 with the idea of playing e5 to chase away his bishop, and then he's able to play c4 and attack my knight. So yes, we still have to be careful. Instead, he moves his king out the way. Can I play knight e4? Knight e4 threatens the f2 square, and if he pulls the bishop back, I could threaten the g3 square. So we have to be aggressive. Let's go knight e4 here. Now I'm threatening f2. It doesn't seem to be a huge threat, but bishop e3 could be a blunder, because if he plays bishop e3, there's a drawback. He's no longer guarding g3, and then I'm going to check. And if king h2, I take the rook with check first. And if, okay, there's no king g1, but I was going to say I'm going to take the bishop and fork, but there's no king g1. So he did blunder with bishop e3. And the funny thing is, knight f2 wasn't a real threat. Now that he plays bishop e3, he's losing. Guys, this is the drawback principle. If you're not asking yourself after every move, what is the drawback of my next move? That's why your elo is low. And you need to be able to do it every single move until it becomes a part of your nervous system, because that's how the brain works. Like, for example, if you play 4 games, the average chess game is, let's say, 25 moves. If you ask yourself, what is the drawback of my last move? What is the drawback of my last move? If you say that 100 times, then how are you going to start blundering? Like, once you reach 80, you're just going to stop blundering with drawbacks, because you'll naturally say to yourself without even saying it. He moves the king, I'm thinking about grabbing the free bishop hit the queen, but let's just take the rook with check. And then his bishop has to take, because if the queen takes, there's a drawback. So he took with the bishop. Now my queen is under attack. I have to move the queen. I could check, but then he's going to block. Very annoying, but let's still check. Because once I move my queen, I don't want this to be hanging. Now I move my queen and knight d5 is now the plan. Just to centralize. b6 is also annoying. He's trying to weaken my king. And if I play a6, he gets some sacrificial ideas. And if I take, I'm also exposing my king. So let's just play. This is risky. Push. I have to worry about the sack and then push. Let's actually just take the pawn. Like the best way to refute a sack is to accept it. And now that I'm ahead by 4 points, if push come to shove, worst case scenario, I sacrifice back something and I'm still winning. So he hits the pawn. Offense is the best defense. Knight d5 guards the pawn, hit the bishop. He pulls the bishop back. And okay, now we're just trading because we're ahead in material. We're just trading the pieces off the board. He also only has 30 seconds on the clock, so it's a guaranteed loss. But I'm trying to be aggressive, so I'm going to hit him with g5, another pawn break. And the reason why I'm trying to be aggressive is because I know he's also trying to be aggressive. So he's hitting my knight. I'm thinking about not moving the knight because if I move the knight, I lose this pawn. Take his pawn instead. So that way, if he takes my knight, I take his bishop with check, and then I keep the initiative. So now I take, he has to react to the move. I'm not expecting him to take because if he takes, then there's going to be so many files pointing towards his king, which is why he moved his king to h3. And now I'm going to take on d5. And this is when we say we're going to force the trades off the board. Okay, I forgot about this rook check, but luckily I'm able to move. And it's the same thing. I'm going to force the trade off the board if he takes on b6 because queen e6 checks the king, hit the queen, and I'm winning the game. He also only has 15 seconds on the clock. So, I mean, the position is just hopeless. And this is what I mean by trading pieces off the board. So if you're winning and someone offers you the trade, they're only doing you a favor because they're weak. Now I play queen e6. I'm forcing the pieces off the board. Now it's impossible for me to lose this. Not because his time is running out, but because I'm ahead by 4 points in an endgame. And all I'm doing now is trying to roll my pawns up the board. So the bishop move. Now I'm threatening to go this, so that way I'm able to roll more pawns up the board. He moves the king. Now I go here. I'm trying to find a way to set up some checkmates. Maybe check here. And if the king moves, I check here. It's actually not working, so let's just defend my pawn that he's attacking twice. He lost on time. More Caro-Kann defense against 1900 players. Stick around. Opponent is now 1900. Let's play some more Caro-Kann defense. Ooh, c4 is actually a very aggressive way to play against the Caro-Kann, but I don't think it changes too much. We still play d5. Now we don't want to take with the queen because knight c3 gains a tempo. So we want to play knight f6, and then that way we take with the knight. And there's also no good ways for him to protect his pawn. Now we take with the knight and we're not chilling. So bishop c4 hits the knight. From here, I'm going to go knight b6 to hit the bishop. And even though I'm moving my knight more than once, I'm forcing him to move his bishop more than once. And then I'm planning on developing my bishop. But if I put my bishop here, I'm leaving this unprotected. So let's play knight c6 first. I'm also controlling the d4 square. And if he plays knight f3, I'm able to go bishop to g4 and pin his knight to his queen, which is why he plays h3. So knight f3 is definitely coming next. And here we just need to finish our development. There's immediate knight d4 though. Like immediate knight d4 moves the knight more than once. Punish him for, yeah, let's go knight d4 and just hit the bishop. Because that's a very strong bishop, and if I'm able to get the bishop here, that could do something. Now, I am moving the same pieces more than once in the opening, but the moves that I'm playing after is also forcing him to move the same piece more than once in the opening. And I could say in return for all of this, I have the bishop here. So he puts his queen on c2. He's more than likely trying to castle on the next move. So to prevent him from castling, I'm going to hit him with this move, bishop c4, keeping his king in the center. If he allows me to play bishop d3, he's in trouble. He needs to play pawn d4 or knight e5, which is not hard moves to find. So he plays pawn d4, but it didn't help with the fact that he's not able to get castled. So now I'm going to try to get my king out the center as quickly as possible, knowing that he's not able to get castled. And I'm also not expecting him to castle on the queen side. All right, let's finish our development. Bishop e7 or d6, not really sure. But I put the bishop on e7 because eventually I can go bishop f6 and start to target his isolated pawn. All right, so knight e5 hits the bishop. We don't want to pull the bishop back. We want to keep the bishop on this diagonal, which makes castling hard for him. There is knight back to d3 though. Knight back to d3 will make it possible for him to castle. But what I could do is go bishop f6 and said, hey, if you're going to castle, I'm going to be able to take the pawn on d4. There's also rook to c8, and like I have no issues in my position. He's the one with all of the issues. Okay, then he plays f4. F4 is weird. That has to be bad, right? He's weakening this diagonal pointing towards his king. I could check, but he's able to block with the bishop. If I takes, he takes here and I get nothing. But if I take on f2, there's queen takes and I also get nothing. So let's just get the king out the center of the board. Maybe he's going to play king to f2, rook to e1, king to g1, and then try to artificially castle his king. No, he castled on the queen side. And that's nice. I'm happy to see that. Because now it's going to be a crazy game and my attack is way faster than his attack. All my minor pieces are developed. Now we're going to get the major pieces in the game. Now I'm putting my rook on the same line as his queen and his king. So he saw the first one and he got his king out the way. Knight d5 applies pressure to the knight. Bishop to d2 guards it. Takes, bishop takes, I get nothing. There's bishop to b4, apply pressure to the knight. Bishop d2 guards it. Then knight d5, apply more pressure to the knight. And yeah, let's do it that way. Let's do it that way. We're trying to start the attack before he starts his attack. And all our pieces are active, so we're just chilling here, except the rook on f8. But right now, to get my position perfect, maybe... Okay, that was nice. Queen there was nice, but I am considering just taking. It messes up his pawn structure in a way, especially since it's around his king. I'm giving up the bishop here though, so it's kind of scary, but let's do it. Once he takes, we go knight d5. That was always the plan. Now I'm hitting the bishop and the pawn, so he has to play bishop to d2 and pawn to c4. I'm expecting this to come, and that's why I'm going to play the move f6, because this knight is doing a very important role on the light squares, protecting d3 and c4. Like I could check his king, but I'm just helping him to pull his king to safety. There's also ideas of queen c, bishop c4, which hits the queen. There's also rook to c6, which threatens this. Yeah, there's just a lot of moves that I have here. I think black is just completely better in this position. His queen and his king is on the same line, so rook c6 is strong. He saw it, he moves the king out the way, but now I'm able to go bishop c4, hit the queen, and all of a sudden I'm just attacking him. Like, he can't think about anything else instead of defending against my attack. And I'm assuming you guys know about focal points, where we just try to target the pawns and the squares around the opponent's king. So now that I'm targeting his pawn on a2, I hit him with rook to a6, and I'm now just attacking his a pawn twice. There's no other ways to add defense to the pawn except a4. Missed that. Very good. But now I'm able to apply even more pressure to a4 with queen to d7. And I'm also trying to bring more pieces in the game. Like, white is completely lost. He's fighting though. King moves. Because now if I takes, he swings over the rook. I don't want to do that. I could check. Yeah, let's do that because his queen and his rook is on the same diagonal. So if I check, he moves the king. There's bishop to b3, which skewers, and I'm winning material. I'm sure there's ways for me to get more than just that though. Let's go check. Force the king to move. There's just too many pieces in the attack here. Like, whenever you have such a strong attack on the opponent's king, do not try to get too materialistic, even though sometimes that's all you can get from the attack. Like, sometimes you're attacking someone with everything you got, and all you got from the attack was a pawn, and then you just get the pawn, trade the pieces off the board, win the game. But sometimes you can get more. For example, king to a3 is just... Wait, what is this? King can't go here, 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 or here? Bro, that's just a checkmate. More Caro-Kann defense against 2,000 level players. Stick around. Our opponent is now 2,000. Let's finish off with a banger of a Caro-Kann defense. He plays d4. We play d5. Let's just continue with the regular stuff. Knight c3. Now we take on e4. And if they take on e4, we play knight to f6. And we're going into the Tartakower variation of the Caro-Kann. But then he's playing bishop c4. And I'm assuming he's playing one of the gambit lines with pawn to f3 coming next. But hey, personally, I haven't really seen this before. Whenever the opponent plays something that you haven't seen, just develop your pieces. So he plays f3. If I takes, knight takes, I'm helping his development. So what I'm going to do is bishop f5. I just need to be careful. Bishop f5, if he takes, I take. If he takes, I takes, and then I should be safe. So let's just develop to f5. I don't want to take on and then help him. There's also pawn to e3, which is also very strong, guys. Like, if the opponent is playing some gambit lines, you can also just play e3 and be like, okay, I'm going to give you back the pawn. And then now your knight is looking ugly, not being developed. But then he plays g4, which is a very strong move because now I have to pull the bishop back. I'm assuming he's going to play g5, which is forcing my knight away from guarding the pawn. And then once I move the knight, he takes the pawn. So knight takes e5 though is what I'm expecting him to play. And from here, I'm just going to continue with my development. He has a very nice space advantage on the king side, but I don't think you want to have a space advantage on the king side. I mean, where are you going to get castled? And if you're still like, I'm sure this was a long video because we went into so many endgames. So if you're still watching this video, I appreciate you guys so much. Just remember to hit the like button. Now, in a longer video like this, then it's usually like 6 or 5% of players still watching. So appreciate you. But remember to like the video. It really goes a far way. Okay, he pulls the bishop back. Not sure why. I'm assuming he wants to go c4 and then just chase my knight out the center of the board, which makes some sense. But it's one of those moves that I'm not even seeing how I'm going to prevent him from playing c4 unless I play b5, which I don't feel comfortable making too much unnecessary pawn moves. So let me just focus on my development. If he plays b4, I'm thinking about bishop b4 check or even knight b4 to attack his bishop. So he plays a3. C4 is definitely coming next. C4 is definitely coming next. Right, let's just go bishop e7. It's fine. Once he plays c4, I'm just going to find somewhere for my knight. He's making a lot of pawn moves, by the way. Let's go knight b6. So we're keeping some pressure on this pawn. And my plan is to get the king out the center and then try my best to open the center, especially since he has been overexerting his pawns like this. It's very important to open the center, especially if you know that your opponent is trying to attack on the king side or just attacking on the flank in general. Okay, he's completing his development, developing the bishop. Let's get our king out the center of the board. And the question is, where is he going to get his king castled? Is he even going to get his king castled? I also have a little idea. Maybe I should have played it from before, but yeah, he saw it. I noticed that his knight was one of the main defenders, so I could have actually get rid of the knight and then grab this pawn. But he played h5, so that makes it even harder for me. But now I'm just trying to open the center of the board. So let's just go e5, trying to open the center. If he takes, I go knight takes. If he plays h5, I just take the knight and then take the pawn. And I'm threatening to take on e4, get my rook in the game, and then just start some attack on his king. All right, so he's finally deciding to finishing his development, but we're still going to take on d4 because we need the position to be open. If he takes with the knight, then I go knight e5, hit the bishop, apply some pressure to the pawn, apply some pressure to this pawn. So I'm assuming he's going to play bishop takes, so that way my knight has no forward moves. Okay, so he took with the bishop. That was the correct piece to capture with. Let's just go rook to e8 and just swing my rook in the center of the board. I'm also putting my rook on the same line as his king now. I'm expecting moves like h5 to come, So I'm trying to play moves like bishop f8. It guards my king. It opens the line for my rook. I also need to get this rook in the game, so maybe queen c7, rook to d8. Like in positions like these where it's so complex, crazy, and dynamic, it's very important that every one of your pieces are doing something. So he moves the queen. Castling on the queen side is a very high possibility now. There's this pawn c5 move, but I'm assuming he's just going to pull the bishop back. Let's continue with the plan, qc7. Now my queen is on c7. It's easier for me to play knight e5, which hits the bishop and it attacks this pawn. Okay, he got his king out the center of the board. I don't think I have any immediate attack on his king. But if I play knight e5 takes, queen takes, that has to be good for me. So let's go knight e5 because both of his bishops are very, very strong here. So if I'm able to get one of those bishops, then I should have a good position. I think it would have been better for him to play h5 and after I takes, he take. So that way he attacks h7. But he takes. Let's just take back. Then he plays f4. Maybe he's trying to trap my bishop. Who knows? All right, so we have to find somewhere safe for the queen. I'm thinking a5 because b4 is not a possibility there. And pulling the queen back to c7 may be a bit passive. But if I keep my queen on c7, he's not able to move this knight though. That's the thing. Queen a5, there's some sacrificial ideas that may or may not work. Queen c7 hits this pawn. But I'm assuming he's going to play rook to c8 anyways. I need to ensure that my pieces are very active. Okay, let's go queen a5. It still kind of guards my king side. I want you guys to notice, and this is very important, and only persons who watch the video up to this point, because some persons just watch it up to a point. We do not push pawns on the side that our king is on, even when the pawns are coming. Notice how the pawns are coming and I'm not pushing any other pawns. It's best to let the pawn touch your pawn and then you push. For example, if he plays h5 and I have to give up my bishop for the knight and then I play a move, once he plays h6, then I'll play g6. If he plays f6, then I'll play g6. But I'm not going to push the pawn before his pawn comes, because let's say I had a pawn on g6, it is now called a hook. And then he plays h5 and all of a sudden he's opening his rook and then my king is going to be under attack. So he did play h5. And okay, do we have to give up the bishop for the knight? Like takes, takes. If I sack, this is under attack. There is bishop to f5, which I like. Bishop f5, there's knight f6. And after I takes, bishop takes, and there's too much things under attack. Okay, this position is actually very scary, guys. It's very scary. Very, very scary. Very. Because if I takes, bishop takes, I'm going to be forced to push the pawn. If I play g6, he's going to sacrifice. If I play h6, it opens the king. So I think I have to try bishop f5. And because he has this battery on f5, it's kind of weird. Knight f6 already is just very strong. Like knight f6, once I take, he takes, h7 is going to hang. But I think I prefer to lose my h-pawn than to push a pawn on the side that my king is on. That's how important it is. But maybe I have to sacrifice something here. Like usually when you're under attack, you should try to look for ways to either counterattack, like just complicate the position, or try to trade the queens off the board. So I'm also thinking of playing queen a4. All right, knight d4, another very strong move. My bishop is now really under attack. Whoa. There's bishop g4, but then the rook hits the bishop. Whoa. And if I allow him to take, then knight f6 wins my bishop. What to do? And if I go here, it just feels wrong, but what to do? Okay, let's go bishop d7. I'm under attack now. I'm under real attack. Real attack. If he plays h6, I push. Maybe he's going to move the knight and then this is going to be under attack. I'm more than likely, I'm just going to allow him to take because, okay, now he plays g6. Now the pawns are contacting each other. And how I recommend that you guys do this is to try your best to open as little files as possible. So for example, I take on g6, he takes on g6, I don't take, I play h6. So that way, my pawn closes the file for his rook, his pawn closes the diagonal for his bishop. Now I'm assuming he's going to play something like f5 and f6 and continue with the attack. But this makes it easier for me to get time to defend. So if f5, I may go rook to f8. But I would love to play queen a4 and just get the queens off the board. If I'm able to get the queens off the board, then I'm fine. Also, whenever you're under attack, if the pawns are pushing up the board and then you get the queens off the board, the endgame could be better for you because the opponent is going to be left with overexerted pawns. F5 was played. Now I know exactly what he wants. He wants to push. Now, rook f8 prevents push, but queen e5 also prevents push. But not only does it prevent push, it hits the knight. There's knight to f3, which hits the queen, but queen f4 saves even more time. That looks like a free pawn, but it's too suspicious. Like after takes, takes, there's no way for him to use the knight as a discovered attack. Like takes, maybe he's going to immediately check. And if I takes, bishop takes, that doesn't help him though. Like, is this just a free pawn? Takes? What am I missing? Push? Cuts off the defense? And then I take here. And if he takes, nah, that doesn't work. So takes, knight takes, takes. Where does he put this knight? Knight d6 doesn't work because I have a check. Okay, guys, let's just take the pawn. That is a pawn, bro. Yeah, that's just a pawn. Don't like to be greedy. Now that he pushed, my queen is no longer guarding. I kind of saw this idea. But the point is, I take here first. If he checks me with anything, I block with the bishop. And if he takes, now I have two pieces attacking c5 and I play queen takes c5, pinning his queen, and I may be ahead by 2 pawns. And this is just going to be completely winning. If he chooses to take on, okay, he took here. Now we take with the queen because we're defending. And once you're defending, you must get the queens off the board. Now I'm just ahead by 2 clean pawns. I mean, I'm also hitting his bishop, my bishop hitting his knight. The goal is just to trade the pieces off the board. And this is completely winning. Whoa. Bishop c4. A check here is not gonna scare me, so let's just bring the rest of the pieces in the game. Like if he checks, I block with the knight and I'm chilling. He moves the knight out though. I mean, maybe I should have took the knight because I'm ahead in material. Trading would have been the best, but let's just centralize the knight now. Knight to e3 is still an idea, trying to trade the pieces off the board, but he pins that knight. Okay, let me just, what to do? Let's pull the bishop back. So keep my king guarded so that way there's no little tricks here. We both have 50 seconds on the clock. I'll never move my knight, by the way. I'll just never move it ever again. So this bishop is just going to have to take whenever he wants. The knight is on my half of the board. I'm going to go rook to e5, hit the knight. This pawn is overexerted, so he moves his rook, doesn't do anything. Maybe he wants to sack and push, doesn't do anything. Let's hit the knight. Remember to hit that like button, guys. The game is about to finish. Knight goes here. Okay, where's that knight even headed? Now I'm just definitely going to take the knight because the knight is now pinned. So once the rook goes here, we just take. We're ahead in material, we're trading. And remember I told you guys about the overexerted pawns? Now you're seeing it. I'm just grabbing all his pawns. And this is how you play the Caro-Kann. Let them come at you, and then once you start defending, and you defend well, so you have to be good at defense, you also have to be good at the end game. So he checks. It would be embarrassing if I got checkmated here, but unfortunately, there's nothing. Now he's just sacrificing because his time is running out. But hey, he has no time on the clock. He's doing a lot of pre-moves, but eventually he's just going to run out of time. Okay, he has zero point 0.1 seconds on the clock. Remember to like the video, and he lost the game.